Hello, and welcome to my channel. I am Damien Marie AtHope. In the simplest terms, I am an atheist-humanist philosopher and prehistorical writer-researcher at DamienMarieAtHope.com. I am specifically an axiological atheist. An axiological atheism can be thought to involve ethical and value theory reasoned and moral argument driven apatheism, agnosticism, atheism, antitheism, antireligionism, secularism, and humanism. Axiological atheists can be understood as a value theory or a value science atheist. As an axiological atheism's ethically reasoned and constructive pro-humanity. I am an axiological thinker, value theorist. The science of goodness, worthiness, usefulness, valuableness, virtue, reliableness, accuracy, validity, morality, integrity, beneficialness, etc., etc. We axiologists have a value consciousness. And in general, we see the architecture of humanistic humanitarianism value in people that we see as dignity beings. Places and things are not. Axiology is a value theory. In its broadest sense, it involves areas of philosophy that are deemed to encompass some evaluative or evaluation aspect. Therefore, it crosses almost all domains in some way or another. Now for a more detailed terms as to what I am. I am an axiological atheist, an anti-theist, an anti-religionist, secularist, humanist, rationalist, writer, artist, poet, philosopher, advocate, activist with schooling in psychology, sociology, as well as I am an autodidact, self-taught in science, archaeology, anthropology, and philosophy. I promote science and am against pseudoscience, pseudo-history, pseudo-morality, things that are found in religion.
Hello.
Hey,
How's it going?
good. Good to see you.
For sure.
Yeah. So we're gonna read the pre-show stuff first, and then we're gonna read the show. This will be our last show in this series. So yeah.
Okay.
But
Sounds
since
good.
it's not one I really like that much because it's not old enough for me. It's too modern now.
Yeah.
But I still find it interesting. But anyways, I wanted to say that people watching this that Cory's going to address primitive communism in our pre-show thing. And I just wanted to say to everybody that we're both leftists and we both lean towards communism. Anyways, so
yeah.
Just so you know. So in other words, what I mean is when we're critiquing this and agreeing or not agreeing, we're not doing it from some outside thing, is my point.
Right. Yeah. All right. Yeah, and our next show we'll be doing it from my new place.
Oh, right on.
Because we're moving over the next couple weeks. So yeah.
Right.
It'll be good.
Yeah, and so the next one will be on Sami shamanism and Scandinavian shamanism.
Okay.
And then the one after that will be on female archaeologists on two subjects, sort of on shamanism, but also on what it is to have been a female in the sexist, racist, archaeological field of the 50s and 60s. And,
oh, geez. Wow.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
And then what's really interesting, I sent you a message. I don't know if you saw it, but she lived for over 10 years. I don't know, or I'm guessing. I think that's what correctly, but maybe I'm wrong. In Regina, Saskatchewan.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
As an archaeologist and worked for some of the archaeological stuff in Regina.
Oh,
and
nice.
The other areas in Saskatchewan, including the medicine archaeological site of the the medicine wheel in Saskatchewan, and I sent you a thing that medicine wheels are in Alberta, the oldest, 5,500. In Saskatchewan, I think it's 2,500 or something like that, or 3,000. I can't remember. But cool. But also in I think Montana and Wyoming. I can't remember exactly, but I thought it was interesting. And also, she knows stuff about, Regina, Saskatchewan, which I thought. Well, I read her book, and I went, "Oh, Cory's gonna like this."
Yeah, a little bit of local stuff going on. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I can't wait to hear you guys kind of talk about Saskatchewan.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, that'll be. I'm sure as you might have experienced this at some point too. Like when you live a place, you don't learn all the cool shit about it. You just kind of live there. So exactly. But I know there is a lot of like really long indigenous history here. So it's very cool.
This is why I also like talking about like not Christian stuff. It's not that I am against it. It's just it's not interesting to me. Culturally. Yeah. Culturally, I like learning about native cultures and understanding people more than just my, little ethnocentric box.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, for sure.
Well, some people don't get like, why I care so much. It's not like, man, it's like you're religious or something. No, not religious. In fact, I actually wish it all to go away, but I do respect people and I do want to understand. And I also think it's important to me personally, like I said before, I feel like learning history like this, it gives you more compassion and more openness towards other ideas, other cultures and stuff.
Yep.
So my goal is, in a sense, is not to be some bigoted atheist.
Right. Yeah.
Or promote that. I want to actually promote the opposite of that, is we can learn. And it doesn't mean we have to believe, but we need to understand. But I feel like in the long run, like especially shamanism, why I'm focusing so much on it, if you don't understand that, you'll never grasp the deepness of paganism or any other religion, organized religion after that, because it's all part of that in a sense.
Right. Yeah, I think like, yeah, I'm an atheist. Yeah, I don't believe in anything spiritual, but I think it's going to be pretty hard to like convince everybody in the whole world to believe, not believe in stuff. So at some level, it's good to learn about it and understand it and be compassionate and empathetic to people. So
well, and that also helps, like when you're going to read in the pre-thing too, like the layers, because I know a lot of times, and I've said this to John, and he said, "Well, I shouldn't teach it that way because it's not accurate." Well, it's like saying the Earth is round. Is it totally accurate to say that scientifically? No. But it's a hell of a lot more accurate than saying the Earth is fucking flat.
Right.
Yeah. At least one is in the ballpark. So, like I said, here's the difference. If I was writing to archaeologists or you wanting to teach, in a sense, archaeologists, then I would be more, in a sense, extremely detailed. You would know every single little variance of my opinion,
right?
Instead of swashing over things, in which I wanted to address a lot. There's a group you're gonna read about who Kropotkin said, which I think they're animist, or at least animist heavy. They're in a sense communism or socialism. I think they also had anarchism too, but in a
right.
sense.
Yeah, which I mean,
I was going to say, but a lot of people call him Sam Bushman or just call him Bushman. Don't ever use Bushman. That's racist as shit.
Okay.
The Sam part, they also said stop doing that. That also is not something.
Yeah, that makes
Well, no, but I was making a point is that's why it's good to learn stuff, because then you.
Yep.
I mean, are we going to just become anarchists and what, or atheists, and just go out and be colonial all over again?
Right. Yeah. Like we're just going to go out and enforce, like we're just going to force people to do the things we believe in. Like,
yeah.
No.
I have a problem with that.
Yeah.
That violates the first principle that I have for my ethics, which is that people have a sovereign right to their own bodies and their own minds, their own beliefs. I mean, that's why I don't do a lot of attacking people when they say I believe something.
Right.
just addressed, is it true or is that inaccurate or whatever. Sometimes I don't even do that because you have a right to believe nonsense.
Yeah.
You didn't ask my opinion, if you, depending on how it's stated. Some people
Yeah.
say, like, I like sports. I don't go, well, I don't always say, well, I hate sports.
Yeah,
which
well,
is
that
an
makes you a bad
accuracy,
person.
right? I don't always say that. Or they go,
Yeah.
don't you just love that sport team? I don't go, fuck no, sports are bullshit. They harm people. I don't like them at all. But, you get my point, is that just because I have an opinion does not mean I need to vocalize it like every time someone talks.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what I said before when I said I would welcome a nice Christian over an asshole atheist, or if they're an atheist but you're a racist, fuck you. If you're a fucking Nazi and an atheist, fuck you.
Yeah.
You see me? If you're fucking anti, fucking trans rights, fuck you. I don't give a shit if you're an atheist. That's all I'm saying, is that I care about like how you want to operate in the world.
Yep, exactly.
Which I've actually gotten more of a fine tune, like I said, by learning stuff about the world.
Yep.
So go ahead.
Sure. So we've got primitive communism. Yes. Question mark. Primitive communism? Yes or no? Primitive communism is a way.
Actually, my answer is yes and no. That's what that's supposed to mean. Yes and no. Yes, there was some. No, it's not as common as people think. No, it wasn't in every single culture, even in hunter-gatherers.
Right.
No, it wasn't in every shamanism, although that was heavy to go with it, probably.
Right.
But the answer is not easy. So that's why, yeah.
Yeah. I guess we both we know that the book Dawn of Everything was not perfect in many ways, but there's one of the main things that I got from it is that human societies had a variety of ways of running, and some of them were very good, and some of them were less good. And
absolutely, some of them were just bad. Let's just go ahead and say it. Bad. If your system was to enslave whole populations of people to survive and steal all their labor, and then on top of that, abuse them, oppress them, bigotry. What? No.
Yeah, that's right. But okay, so primitive communism is a way of describing the gift economies of hunter-gatherers throughout history, where resources and property hunted or gathered are shared with all members of a group in accordance with individual needs. In political sociology and anthropology, it is also a concept which is often credited to Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels that describes hunter-gatherer societies as traditionally being based on egalitarian social relations and common ownership. Anarchists, including Peter Kropotkin and Elisée Reclus, believed that societies that exemplified primitive communism were also examples of anarchist society before industrialization. An example of this is...
Sorry, real quick.
Yep.
And on that, like I told you, it's not... I think there still is anarchist societies because there's still the Hazai and several other animist groups in Africa today, and maybe some other things in the world. I'm not saying... I just don't have I know a lot.
Right.
But there is a limit to what Damien knows. And I'm just saying I do know that there is ones that I would call today both anarcho-communist or anarcho-socialist or some version of either of those concepts.
Some kind. It's on the spectrum of anarchism, communism.
Right. But to say that it's not existing, it's always existed. That's my point. It's never not existed.
Right.
You're just saying it's not all over the place, and it's not how the biggest not corporation, but
the empires run.
Empires, whatever you want to call them, corporate run, oligarchies.
That's right.
Whatever bullshit, these things that we call, countries. How about that?
That's right.
Today. Because of course they could change tomorrow, and whatever.
Yep, and they will. They will change some tomorrow.
100 years, I guarantee everything will not be the same. So.
That's right. So an example of this is Kropotkin's anthropological work on anarchism and gift economies, Mutual Aid, A Factor of Evolution, which is a great book that if you enjoy reading, that's something everybody should read, which uses a study of the San people of Southern Africa for its thesis. And then, while Damien can roughly agree with anarchist Kropotkin on African hunter-gatherer societies, that animist heavy cultures in central southern Africa do seem to exhibit an anarchist socialism These cultures have varied styles and should be viewed as variations more than a single group or approach. Makes sense to me.
Right. That's so it like if you explained concepts of anarchism, then they'd probably go, yeah, we agree with that. Or we,
Right.
But if you said, are you anarchist? They'd be like, just like saying the same thing. I think communists too. But they would just go, we just do this. This is, but yeah, but they're doing
Yeah.
in a sense.
Yeah.
In other words, well, it's like us. If you ask a white person, are you ethnic? Right?
Yeah.
I mean, yes, you are, motherfucker. We all are here. Fucking wake up. Yes, a white is an identity. Doesn't mean it. And he does have certain cultural norms. Even if you say you're American or a Canadian or a Western. He's all
You're much more likely to appeal to like your background in some way. Like you'd say, like I'm Irish Ukrainian, or I'm
right, exactly,
stuff like that. But yeah, Canadian whites and American whites don't have a culture of their own. It's collective.
Well, you have a Canadian, but I don't totally agree with that. You have a Canadian culture, which has a whole bunch of things that go with it. In other words, like there's there's slang, there's values, there's things that go with it. In other words, if you don't think so, do you think that a Canadian could be taken and put down in Florida and would totally blend in? Or vice versa.
It depends on the Canadian.
Well, true. It depends on how. But I'm just making a comment, though.
Yeah.
It is, even as a general rule, that I've been to Canada, and I'm telling you, it's weird.
There is
compared to what I'm used to, is totally. And I know you probably don't even realize it. It reminded me when I wanted to go to a strip club, and I didn't know what to ask. I was embarrassed to ask people because it's like, not seen as the same in America as it is in Canada.
Right.
Because I said in Canada, they're like, everyone's like, yeah, all kinds of people coming out of, they were just walking by, would come and tell me, and this, I'm like going, this is the weirdest shit I've ever dealt with. Then I wanted to change my money to American from, to Canadian, I thought, for the strip club. And they're like, oh no, just use American money. And then who told me that? I was in line at the bank. Was an Asian woman behind me.
Oh yeah.
Told me everyone's turning around, smiling, have a good time. It was so bizarre. I don't even know how to explain it.
Yeah. Well, obviously you weren't in Saskatchewan because we literally do not have strip clubs in Saskatchewan.
Well, I was in Vancouver.
Okay. Yep.
British Columbia. But but once again, so that area of British Columbia, though, is different a little bit than Saskatchewan. So once again, you have a Saskatchewan culture. I'm just saying people don't realize they have cultures sometimes. That's all I was trying to say about the San, the people, the Khoi people of South Africa, is that they have a culture too, and if you ask them, they would think this is just what we do. Like, is it same thing as a Canadian? You'd say like, well, that's right. Of course, it's this or whatever.
This is just common sense. What are you doing?
Right, exactly. So, anyway, keep going. I just wanted to get people the frame is actually the same, but we're so in it we don't think about it. We just look at other people and go, they have culture. Oh, I see it.
Right. All right, so the hunter-gatherer San are among the oldest cultures on Earth and are thought to be descended from the first inhabitants of what is now Botswana and South Africa. The San peoples, also derogatorily called Bushmen, are the members of the indigenous hunter-gatherers cultures of Southern Africa and the oldest surviving cultures of the region. Their ancestral territories span Botswana, Namibia, Angola, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Lesotho, and South Africa. The designations Bushman and San are both exonyms. San is a derogatory word originally used by the pastoralist Coco. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but anthropologist Henry Harpending stated in the 1970s the name San spread in Europe and America because it seemed to be politically correct, while Bushman sounded derogatory and sexist. But one did not call someone a San to his face. The San referred to themselves as their individual nations, such as Kung, also spelled with an X, exclamation mark, and then XUUN. And there's a variety of other ways they've
Right. So
reverted
but
themselves.
this goes to my
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
If you say, oh, well, the Sand people do this, that's a ridiculous statement, because it's like saying, well, everyone in Canada is the same, Cory. You didn't know that?
Right. It's like when colonizers came here and they called the indigenous people Indians, right?
Right.
And there's multiple nations across Canada of various indigenous
Exactly.
nations, and like it's just nonsense to call them all the same person, same.
And that's all I'm trying to do too, is to show people that even though I agree with Kurt Pocken, I want to address that.
Right.
This is not really one people. That concept is an error.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, it's very European, I guess.
Yeah, and so much so we don't even think about it. Even I had a hard time trying to figure out how to explain who it was without using it. That's how messed up it is. I was like, it's really messed up. But like I told you before, I'd rather live in that uncomfortableness. Me trying to care about others, to at least address it, so that other people know that we need to be careful. And if they said they don't like that, we shouldn't go, well, that's what you're called,
Yeah. No, they get to decide what they're called, not us. That's how that works. So again, there's many individual nations. They all have various names that I have no idea how to pronounce. So I'm just not even going to bother being insulting. But then it goes on to say, representatives of San peoples in 2003 stated their preference for the use of such individual group names where possible over the use of the collective term San.
So like I said, unfortunately, we can't pronounce a lot of their names. That is an issue. But we should want to. And people that are definitely more anthropological than you or me. I mean, my show isn't really about trying to be exact on words, although I just wanted to point out that we should care, and I do want to acknowledge that.
Yeah, and also like it would be great if a group like that, like even the indigenous peoples of Canada, right? Like I don't know how to pronounce many of the various nations and some of the words and the names that are involved there, and that's something that it's on me to try to learn when I before I try to use it or try to, address them. But it's also a product of colonization that we don't know how to pronounce them because they were lumped into the same group, right?
And that we don't have to. We feel no obligation to learn.
Right. Yeah.
Which I was thinking while we're saying this. I think we should do a show about the indigenous people of Saskatchewan and the indigenous people of Florida.
Sure.
Some show that shows both those,
Yeah, that'd be awesome, actually. Yeah.
So, but like I said, because I know that once you learn, it gives you more compassion. It takes away that otherness that I think the colonialist has done a really good job of instilling in all of us. Is those people are other. We don't even have to care.
That's right. Yeah. Okay, so primitive communism and hunter-gatherers, Venus figures from the Kostenki Borshevo cultures of Russia, 30,000 to 20,000. Damien does not think so. Rather, to Damien, it seems there may have been signs of slavery, or at least some level of inequality may be expressed. Thus, primitive communism seems to be lacking.
And I'm trying to explain that this is a hunter-gatherer culture at 30,000 years ago to 20,000 years ago. In Russia, it is a shaman, but there's, in a sense, like, if you think about it, and I know people don't understand this, but there's more than this, but I'm just going to break it up simpler to understand. There's like three cultures, Europe and then Russia, which I only consider, by the way, the not Siberia. Take all of Siberia off, pretty much just that little European, East Europe, whatever, Russia. That's Russia. That shamanism is different than Europe. It's also different than Siberia. Even though there's heavy relatedness to all of them, there is something only evidence of women having their arms and wrists tied. They call it bracelets. I'm like, what? Give me a break. Bracelets?
Right. Yeah.
What the? Anyways. So, because if you look at the position they're in, that it's tied to a belt, and yeah, they're being controlled. I say I don't know if it could be a shamanism, maybe controlling an ancestor spirit, if they thought the weather was bad or something, or hunting wasn't good. But I also think it could just be slavery.
Right.
What it looks like could just be what it looks like. So, because I don't think that I've said before that this time there's no goddesses.
Okay.
These are spirits, if anything, and probably ancestors. A lot of the dolls look like they have things on their face over their eyes, which would be shamanism's face coverings as a way of seeing the other world or whatever.
Okay.
They're talking to spirits. They're very common. They're all over the world. Africa, in Americas, Europe, China.
That's kind of the practice, eh?
It's a big deal with shamanism. Or they have damaged eyes. Anyways, in fact, the first burial of a shaman, she had a damaged eye, which doesn't surprise me. This is at 30,000 almost. So, but my point is, but that is Western shamanism, not the central, which is Russian, and then Eastern being Siberia. They were all different, even though they all were related and connected in a sense of Eurasia shamanism. They still were, once again, individual. And even it breaks down more than even that.
Right.
So that's what I was trying to say. A lot of times I talk really high, like as in one whole thing. Yeah. There's a lot more variations. So I just wanted to address that in the communism thing. That I think my point was, I do think some shamanism is connected to socialism, communism. I do, because it's about caring, about healing, caring. So I totally can dig that they was connected. I just wanted to show that even in shamanism, here's slavery. So in Russia, I know that's not all of them, and that's why I want to make the point. It's more like a central thing, but it's still there. So you can't say like all hunter-gatherers and all shamans, were probably practicing communism. No, that's not fucking accurate.
Right. Yeah. Stop trying to lump them all into the group. That's the thing.
There you go. So go ahead and keep reading and look at the picture too, because I wanted you to. I said when the video, I'm going to show the picture so people will be able to see it.
Yeah.
I want Cory to understand what I am talking about.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I draw the figurines. I wanted to leave the actual figurines so people didn't think that I made this shit up.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. These are like actual pictures of the figurines.
Of the actual figurines. So I wanted to, and just because it seems so outrageous to say that 30,000 years ago they had sex slavery or something, with these supposed goddess dolls that people call them. Like, come on, even that can't be right, because they're tying their hands of the gods or goddess. Come on.
Right. That doesn't seem like accurate, hey?
No. Plus, like I said, they're clearly wearing shaman hoods. That they had. There's several shaman burials that have those hoods. So it to say that a being that is obviously a shaman related, it can't be anything more than a human. Unless you're saying it's a sacred ancestor, but still, that's not yet a god. Eventually, these may turn into gods and goddesses and have maybe somewhat similar mythologies kind of around them in a sense. They aren't yet to me. So I reject, because when they call them Venus, they're not. There is association with the planet and the moon. I don't want to go into that, but what they really mean is it's a goddess, and I reject that. These are not goddesses.
Okay.
Eventually, figurines, I think, do have a relationship. They may have been to goddesses or even sacred
but
ancestors.
These ones in particular are not.
These ones at 30,000, 20,000, no fucking way.
Okay.
I don't think so. I don't think there's anything even close to that until 12 to 10,000, sometime around there.
Okay.
So no deities until then to me. Spirits maybe, but not deities.
Right. So we've got slavery or shamanism, controlling magic, or both. Bracelets and necklaces are found on a number of Central and Eastern European Paleolithic female figures, but absent from Western Europe. The
And
Venus
also
figurines.
absent, they should have said also absent from Siberia, because that would be accurate. They're not
right.
adding that.
Yeah. The Venus figurines of Kostenki are prehistoric representations of the female body, usually in ivory and usually dated between 25,000 and 20,000 years ago, making them part of the graviton industry of the Upper Paleolithic period.
Well, and then there's another point. And I would say that most of the gravitins seem extremely egalitarian, and probably, even though they had like leaders, sort of, they seem to be egalitarian. They maybe even had some kind of communism. But once again, not the ones in Russia.
Right. So found on the Kostoyonki Borshkovovo archaeological complex in Russia. Kostenki is a very important Paleolithic site on the Don River in Russia. It was a settlement which contained Venus figures, dwellings made of mammoth bones, and many flint tools and bone implements. Kostenki and Kostayenki is not actually a single site, but is really an area on the right bank of the Don River in the regions of the villages of Kostenki and Borshovo, consisting of more than 20 site locations, all dating to the Paleolithic.
But this goes back to the same point. A lot of times when an archaeological person would, like John was saying, to be accurate, would say 20. I would just say the Kostenki site, when actually not really one site.
Right.
But that's the difference between trying to actually teach archaeology or give people a basic understanding of what's going on.
Yeah, that's right. Like there needs to be an in-between between academic language and the precision with which they insist that they speak, which is important, and the common person, right?
Well, like just so you know, when I say things happen in Turkey, their skin crawls. They want me to say Antonola.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, they don't like it.
So I just go, yeah, but that's like me.
But nobody knows what. Yeah.
That's like saying, southwest of the Americas, North America specifically is where I live. You're like, well, where? Because it's in Florida. But heaven forbid, they'll use the word Florida, but they will not use the word Turkey.
Right.
Yeah. But anyways, they can keep their opinion about that. I don't really care. I'm trying to deal with regular people that don't even know what Antonola is.
Right. Yeah. So you gotta give them a reference that they know.
Right. So well, that's why I told you before. That's the biggest difference. I will never make an archaeologist 100% happy with what I say, because I'm not talking to them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So the next thing we have here is framed as a question from Twitter. And it says, "Hello, Damien. Have you done any research into the history of transgenderism and the belief in reincarnation? Another thought is there a link between shamanism and transgenderism? I see a lot of the persecution of trans people nowadays is also a persecution of non-Abrahamic beliefs." Damien's response: "Transgenderism and the belief in reincarnation? ? I don't know. Shamanism and transgenderism, or gender switching. I think so in some versions of shamanism, yes, and especially it seems so in Siberian shamanism."
Right, and that's a big, in a sense, deal, is that understanding that, like we already did, that shamanism is not some monolithic thing. It's just like,
right.
If you really understand Christianity, you understand Christianity is actually 40,000 different denominations. So it's not like it's one Christian world against everybody else. The Christian world would fight itself, and actually has.
Yeah. That's right.
So my point is, I'm just saying, so that's why I feel like it's really important to understand there is variation, but we don't have to learn every single variation.
Right. Animism and gender. Among the Ojibwe and the speakers of the cognate Algonquian language, a grammatical distinction is made between animate and inanimate genders, not between male and female genders. Persons and personal actions are talked about in a different way from objects and impersonal events. as demonstrated in the work of such scholars as Marjorie Balzer, Marie Zapilka, and Bernard Saladin Dangleur. These and other indigenous conceptions of gender, sex, and sexual orientation tend to disrupt Western binary conventions of male and female, conflations of sex and gender, and heterosexuality as normative. Shamanic gender identities. Shamanic behavior necessitates a broadening of the notion of gender to be more fluid and dynamic, to include not only male and female, but also various mediating identities. Zaplika, for example, notes that Siberian shamans are a third class, separate from males and females. And Saladin Dangleur proposes a ternary model for Inuit shamans, wherein shamans are, quote-unquote, in-between persons by persuasion or initiation, who embody a third gender due to their ability to mediate. The third gender status of Inuit shamans is part of wider gender concepts. Children are understood to have decided which gender to be before or at birth, their genitalia adapting to their decision. Other children are given the name of a deceased relative of the opposite gender, performing that gender identity for the time that they hold the name. It's interesting.
Well, the whole point is to show, I'm trying to show that you got to understand that our notions of religion and of sexuality are just not the world.
Yeah, that's right.
5,000 years ago, so people understand, is about the time when you could say male and female only was starting to be pushed.
Right.
Before that, they had even Europe had like 7 genders or some shit like that. I mean,
right.
It did, or certainly did. I guarantee didn't have 2.
It wasn't just those. Yeah,
absolutely
it was like
was not. But so my point is like I said, do you see why understanding the religion of shamanism does help you kind of understand different than just our bullcrap? But so here's a thing about a real shaman. This is one who was in Siberia, and by the way, didn't want to tell the person that, because he goes, it was a real person who was a shaman, but didn't want to tell him I'm a shaman because there was a threat from the government to eradicate shamans.
Okay.
They wanted to force Christianity. From the Soviets down, there was law that it's illegal to be a shaman. So anyway, so this is a shaman saying, I'm not exactly a shaman, but I'll show you. But it actually was a shaman. And so he puts on a woman's coat with fringe and metal decorations. He then takes his hair and makes it long and loose or whatever to be more feminine-like.
Okay.
And then puts on a woman's fringed hat. And then he puts on a deer skin. Anyways, and he starts to beat the drum. And this is what he's saying. My forefather, my ancestors stand near me. To me, stand near me, my girl spirits. So I just wanted to throw that out. I thought that related to gender also. The concept of, that's why I said gender switching. There's a person that when he was presenting male, and then to do the shaman sacred stuff, he has to transition to a female.
Right.
Or a third gender, in a sense, being in between or somewhat of both. I feel both, like as in, I feel some male and some female. I can take tests sometimes that says 50%. It feels maybe more 60% male and 40% female, but that also could just be that I live in such a toxic, bullshit environment. I haven't ever been to be myself.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
Not okay.
That's fair.
I mean, society just like they tell, well, look at how you look, and I'm like, yeah, you never asked
how I look isn't how I
fucking feel inside, dickhead.
Yeah, that's right.
Like what I value, I don't value shit that you value. I don't. You say I like this, and I'm like, I don't like any of that shit.
Right. Yeah.
I don't. I've always not felt the same. But anyways, my point is, I'm saying it's so much a part of Siberian shaman to be third gender. The concept is that is normal. So our society, I'm just making a point. our society, religion is against transgender. Well, that absolutely is wrong. In Siberian shamanism, it would be required.
Right. Like it's not religion, it's your religion. It's it's your view of this. Yeah.
Right. I'm just saying. So, like I said, this is why I do feel it's important to learn about other cultures and other religion stuff, especially the old stuff that gave meaning. Yeah. Because because it's funny when they go, I want to follow tradition. Like, oh, good. Can we follow the ones in Siberia that where transgender is actually celebrated?
Yeah. Let's use some of the cultures that are actually inclusive, perhaps.
Yeah. What a shocker. How would we call them primitive, right? Don't they want to call that progressive and woke?
Right.
So from shamanism that they thought was evil, is actually progressive and woke or whatever, I just, anyways. So it's not woke, because woke is the concept to me that it's somehow new. There's nothing new about this.
Yeah.
And it's wrong to say religion is against trans people. You mean some religions. Yeah. Some religions celebrate trans people.
Yeah. Some religious people, perhaps. It's not even. It's
a bit more accurate.
Yeah. Right. So third gender and changing ones. Third gender, or shamans in other instances, may have a fourth or even multiple gender identity. Overlaps in some examples with homosexuality and the marriage of some shamans to same-sex spirit partners, involving, in some examples, homosexual marriages in the ordinary world. Shamans' costumes may combine features peculiar to the dress of both men and women. Early explorers assumed biological males dressed in women's clothing, some of whom were shamans, were transvestites, which now is not it's not typically a word that is accepted.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So and that just shows see, that's what's also going to be good, because we're going to hear about how racist and sexist and homophobic and whatever archaeology used to be and anthropology used to be. And although it's now trying to, be better, and I do think a lot of them are, it still has a very ugly, racist, colonial, fucking sexist.
Yeah. Past. Yeah. A lot of the like, it seemed like when we were talking to like John and other archaeologists and whatnot, like they say like some of the books that they learned from and that were taught in the past have like very like bad sourcing and just bad thinking within them.
Yes.
And that was taught as normal for so long and adopted as the normal perspective for so long that it's hard to get, it takes time to get out of that.
Well, there's an archaeologist that I'm connected. I follow. He doesn't follow me, but I follow him. That's just them. I'm not totally sure. I'm not trying to misgender. I don't remember.
Right.
But anyways, they're doing trans. Maybe they're trans. They're doing. I don't remember now. But anyways, I do know that they're focusing the study on transgender archaeology.
Okay.
Right on. And also intersex. And I was like, right on.
That's cool. Yeah.
Because our society acts like, once again, these things are new. They're not.
Yeah.
They act like it's where something's trying to be forced down, religious people they don't want. Actually, used to be part of religion.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
You're wrong.
It's like when people say that that drag is part of a kink thing and it's only new and it's just like it's all about sex, and it's like absolutely not. Like none of that makes you're looking at it from like such a narrow worldview that you're ignoring the however hundreds, thousands of years of men and women dressing as the opposite gender and performing vital roles within their culture that had nothing to do with sex.
Well, and also speaking of that and shamanism does drag shows in a sense, because they're actually a performer more than they sing, they dance, they bounce on the ground. Sometimes they act like they're cutting themselves, or they do full on art performances.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it's got a long history, this stuff. So,
right. Yeah. So anyways, not new. Go ahead.
New. Yeah. And the pejorative French term berdache, or which that means male prostitute or transvestite, entered anthropological literature. The more sensitive two-spirit was proposed by Native Americans in the 1990s, referring to the individual having two spirits, although changing ones more successfully avoids reproducing a Western binary opposition. Fair.
Right, because as you already read, they, especially in Siberia, they don't believe it's just two. They literally believe 3, 4. I mean, saying it's just 2, although it could be accurate for some, I feel it's accurate for me because I feel like I'm some male and some female. So
Right.
I feel like that statement is accurate. I feel like I have 2. So as soon as I heard 2, and I was like, that's me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a male or female. So it doesn't, and there isn't language that says accurately that you can have 2 type of gender identities. And
Yeah.
I was born intersex. So, I mean, that's not a big shocker. I was, in a sense, anyway, I don't go into all that, but I'm just saying my point is that our whole system is binary, like colonialism.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it seems like our language and even our imaginations are insufficient because we've been trained to believe in it in a binary way.
Exactly.
Where, if maybe we had a broader background, then we would be able to have like an idea of what a 5th gender or a 4th gender might be. But as it is, we've been force-fed this binary for so long, it's hard to even conceive of what it might.
Right. Exactly. And I feel like with me, people want me to pick a side or something, and it's like, that's like, and I'm not bisexual, but I'm just saying it's like telling bisexual people to pick a side.
Right.
You're
Which
not
also
listening.
happens a lot.
Well, it does happen a lot, but I was saying is you're not listening.
Yeah.
The person is telling you what the fuck is going on. You're like, yeah, no, no.
Yeah.
That's too complicated for me.
Yep. So non-human sexual relations, question mark. Cross-dressing may indicate shamans' difference from the rest of the community or show that they have formed an intimate sexual or marital relationship with a non-human person of the same gender. Transvestitism may be temporary, temporary, a part of specific performances, or a permanent as a sign of a distinctive everyday identity.
Right. So taking those old language, let's add some new language to it. To me, one is, in a sense, I'm like a drag, and the other one is a trans person.
Right.
It's not. I also wouldn't use the transvestite thing and whatever else.
Yeah. It's a shame that it's actually still like it's written that way, but
it is written that way.
But it's
I didn't change it.
That's the reference links are in here, so if a person wanted to go check that out.
Yeah, well, and right, and I've added all of this, even this pre-show stuff, because I feel people are going to probably want to read it or challenge it, so that's fine too if you think you can. So I've added the info that you're reading into the blog for show 12.
Okay.
So it's going to be in the video. So that all the links, and there's actually a little more than you're reading.
Right. Kind of shorten it a little bit.
Yeah. So they should go read more.
Where was I? Shamans may undertake marriage to non-human persons of the same gender as themselves. And for example, a female shaman may sometimes be male in relation to a spirit wife. A Sora shaman of the Indian subcontinent marries a man and the spirit son of her predecessor, who is her own aunt. The tightly bound relationship between shamans and their other world helpers, especially those with whom they form sexual and or marital relationships, may mean that secrets are kept, and the revealing of such secrets may lead to the withdrawal of assistance from a non-human helper, thus compromising the shaman's ability to shamanize. Sex has been theorized as key to understanding shamanism by Robert Hamayan, who attends to shamans, sex, and gender in Siberian shamanism. She argues that Shamanic seances among the Evanik and Buryats are sexual encounters in themselves. She views the marriage between shamans and their non-human helpers as more significant in understanding what these shamans do than the ecstasy or mastery of spirits, altered states, or journeying emphasized by other scholars. It's interesting.
Well, and I would say that I don't think that every single type of thing is in every type of shamanism. I don't obviously already explain that to you. I don't think that means that every single thing happens or that only one aspect is the most important. I don't sort of agree with that either, because it's like saying that to a Christian, only one book of the Bible matters.
Right.
They even if they thought one was good, they would not deny the other books matter, or at least some of them. So,
yeah.
But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, I imagine because, like, if you have a materialist worldview like I do, when you hear the term non-human person or non-human sexual relationships, you're not thinking like spirits, right? Like you're thinking like, what the fuck are they going to talk about here?
You're thinking, is Damien going to have us read about what animal sex?
Yeah, I'm hoping this isn't like non-consensual sex with animals. Not that there can be consensual sex with animals, but like, you know what I mean, right?
Yeah. No. Here's the thing though. If that was a fact, then I would address it.
Right. Yeah.
I have addressed that it is a fact that kings have an association, especially in Proto-Indo-European religions, the older ones,
right,
to actually have sex with a horse, and then they killed it, and everybody ate it, and they would actually have sex with the horse in front of everyone to be crowned king. Then later, it changed to different, same Proto-Indo-European in a sense.
Yeah, I suppose, like you say, like if a group of people is doing that, that's part of their culture. Then
I
do have to address it on some level.
I still don't think it's okay. I'm not a cultural relativist.
Yeah.
I'm not, I'm a multiculturalist. I try to be respectful, as you see. I try to understand and learn, and I, even though I don't believe things, I don't say bad stuff about everybody.
Right.
You know, I try not to. So. But that doesn't mean I'm not. That's why when one archaeologist says that's why we're cultural relativists, I was like, okay, you are.
Right. Like I don't
agree with that.
Yeah, I'm not actually. But,
I'm not. I don't want anyone to get that false impression that is something I support. I don't support that. I support multiculturalism. I support, in a sense, cultural sensitivity to try to be respectful to people. I just feel because they own themselves and they have self-sovereignty and they have rights and dignity like I do and everybody does. So,
and part of the thing with like a lot of like I guess a lot of white supremacists or like a lot of like North American supremacists, imperialists would be like, I'm not a cultural relativist, but they are not a cultural relativist differently than we are not a cultural relativist.
That is
right.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. I would agree.
Yeah.
Well, just like there's people that say that they're an anti-theist or anti-religionist, and they're vile pieces of garbage.
Right. Yeah. That's
where I am, but I have religious people following me because I'm not a vile piece of garbage.
Right. Yeah. Because you're still a person who gets to determine what you want for yourself. So that's yeah.
But as an anarchist, I couldn't feel justified or ethical because people understand my anarchism or socialism or any of that stuff isn't because I read stuff and was impressed.
Mm-hmm.
It's that I suffered a lot as a child, and that made my vision of at first to take just anything I could for myself, like uber capitalist, whatever. But once I became an atheist, and then I realized that the new thing that I had to have an ethical standard, and I couldn't be some wishy-washy bullshit that I just stepped on all the time, like it seemed a lot of people do, and just ask for forgiveness. Because in my worldview, there is no God to give me forgiveness.
Right. Yeah.
So my actions matter, every single one of them. My words, so that changed in a sense, and I wanted to be ethical, so I learned axiology. Once I learned that, I learned it's in everything. And so that means everything I do, every way I think, every way I reason, or every way I come to what's truth or what's good or what's so. Anyways, because of that, it's really changed me. So even though, but a lot of that also is learning stuff. Like I said, learning archaeology, learning other cultures. You get a more cultural. How about you? Would you say that you now have a different opinion of shaman before you ever met me?
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot more widespread than I ever realized. That's the thing. Like, I guess I kind of always associated it with indigenous cultures around me, right? Like it was, the indigenous peoples of North America, various tribes or nations had shamans or what have you, and I kind of had the TV version of shamans in my head, right? Like,
medicine man.
Yeah, that's right. So it's really good to have a much more broad kind of perspective on it now. It's like, yeah, I don't know. I think it's a lot more interesting and a lot more in depth than I ever realized, for sure.
Oh yeah, and it's going to get more in depth when we go even more into other branches.
Right.
Because a lot of stuff I talk about is Paleolithic in a sense, shamanism, or in a sense Siberian shamanism. I talk about those two a lot.
Right.
But there's
it wasn't even that long ago that I didn't realize there was an indigenous peoples of Siberia that had shamans. Like that's a new thing to me.
That is, and you were a leftist, right?
Right. Yeah. Like that's still a new thing to me.
And the fact that when people say Russia owns its land, I'm like, actually, that's, if you're a leftist, I don't understand how you support that.
Right. Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
The people of Siberia have been fucked and are even currently being fucked. Putin, I told you, that land that's the indigenous people, which they don't acknowledge them as owning that land.
Of course.
So they said, oh, that land that they're living on, there's not that many people, so we're just going to move a bunch of people. We'll offer free land. Of course, it's their land, but we're going to offer free land up there in their area so that we can make it more populated with us.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I'm sure people up
there. How's that not colonization?
They're anxious for it. Can't wait till they come.
Jeez,
yeah. So my point is, it's not that Russia colonized a long time ago with the Tsar or something. The Russians did that also after the Soviets came, and then the Soviets even did one step further. They made sure that you couldn't even practice your religion and took away their language and made them go to, I don't know, Indian schools. Just like Canada and America did. And also it's the same thing that happened to the Sami up there in Sweden and Finland and Norway. And even sometimes, So I'm not saying anything limited to that. That happened all over. Africa was entire country was taken over by imperialist powers. And then they now look at it and go, look at that shit country that we destroyed and we robbed and pillaged and raped and killed.
And we're still exploiting.
Yeah, we're still exploiting. How come they're not doing better?
Yeah, that's right. Yep. All right. So gender identities conclusion. Early work on Siberian shamans by Sergei Shirokogorov I hope, that's something. Demonstrated that shamans may be either or both hostages to the spirits and their sexual and or marital partners. Shamans might then be defined as people who welcome possession as an embodiment of sexual and or marital relationship with other than human persons.
Let me talk one real quick to show you. To me, there's at least, as far as relating to spirits, there's at least 2, if not 3 kinds. So one, in a sense, I think does it where the 2 main ones are that you have a possession. The spirit absolutely possesses you like a medium, and you can talk and out of the spirit, kind of. So it's very much kind of like that. And then there's another one where they astral projection, where they leave, go to the spirit world, the heaven, hell, whatever, underworld, go talk or whatever with them or do stuff, and then come back. Into their body, into this world or whatever. So there's those 2 and the other one I think is like the drumming or whatever, and stuff can make them come in an area close to where the shaman can interact or sort of or whatever. But the main 2 things to me are the possession and the leaving your body, supposedly, and traveling to all these whatever, to that star or whatever.
It's interesting stuff.
Cory's like, you know what? I always learn one or two things.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Every time we talk, I always learn stuff. All right. As the most effective mediators, then, between genders, between humans and non-humans, the living and dead, and so on, shamans mediate between all of the many constituent elements, beings, and situations of the cosmos. They thereby actively accomplish meanings through the construction of relations between human and other than human worlds. Egalitarian and communist-like hunter-gatherer societies have been studied and described by many well-known social anthropologists, including James Woodburn, Richard Bourget-Lee, Alan Barnard, and Jerome Lewis. Anthropologists such as Christopher Boehm and Chris Knight and Lewis offer theoretical accounts to explain how communistic, assertively egalitarian social arrangements might have emerged in the prehistoric past. Despite differences in emphasis, these and other anthropologists follow Engels in arguing that evolutionary change, resistance to primate-style sexual and political dominance, culminated eventually in a revolutionary transition. Lee criticizes the mainstream and dominant culture's longtime bias against the idea of primitive communism, deriding bourgeoisie ideology that would have helped us believe that primitive communism doesn't exist. In popular consensus, it is lumped with romanticism, exoticism, the noble savage. Due to the strong evidence of an egalitarian lack of hierarchy and a lack of economic inequality, historian Murray Bookchin has argued that Çatalhöyük was an early example of anarcho-communism, and so an example of primitive communism in a proto-city. However, still others use Çatalhöyük as an example that refutes the concept of primitive communism.
And I would say that I don't agree with Murray Bookchin that
Right.
that I do believe there was and still is anarcho-communism. I just don't believe that the communism is in Çatalhöyük.
Ah, okay.
You get what I'm saying? And I'm not saying there may, just so people can understand what I'm saying, I'm not even saying that other areas maybe in Turkey might have had some. I know that Çatalhöyük didn't.
Right.
There's behaviors, or if it did, it wasn't a strong thing, and it eventually was the downfall because a leader or somebody who started abusing people or people started abusing each other or something, and then it broke up. But I'm not exactly sure. But it's definitely has violence and leaders and elite people and elite burials. So
right, yeah. So it's not anarcho-communism for sure.
Absolutely not.
Right.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, which the next paragraph says Damien does not think Çatalhöyük is great at representing. To Damien, there is some amount of hierarchy / special leader burials for a few males and special female burials, seeming to be shaman or religious authority, or at least some level of inequality may be expressed. Thus, primitive communism in this area seems to be lacking. Damien will add some of his art as a helpful reference to show the inequality. And then we're going to have some pictures.
Right, because I try to back up so you can get a better, little bit more detailed reason why I think this. I mean, do you look at those and they're buried, like the leader men are buried with a knife with snakes on.
Right.
And it happens more than once. So it's you know what I'm saying? It's a continual thing, a new leader and then a new knife. It could be for religious sacrifice or something. I don't totally know. So that, but
it's clear that some people are having special representation or special treatment.
And you see he's got some kind of a crown, a leopard crown.
Right.
And then the art, there's rock art that they've done, and only a few have leopard crowns, or one has a leopard crown. So
okay,
I don't know if it means there's one king or several leaders or whatever, I'm almost assuming it's a few leaders or like a top and then a few governors, kind of like a hierarchy.
Right.
Definitely not anarchism.
Like a literal hierarchy.
like a simplified version, but yeah.
No gentry but grave makers, inequality beyond property accumulation at Neolithic Çatalhöyük.
That's a recent article, by the way.
Okay. So the abstract. Archaeologists have adopted the Gini coefficient to evaluate unequal accumulations of material supporting narratives modeled on modern inequality discourse. Proxies are defined for wealth and the household to render 21st century style economic tensions perceptible in the past. This property paradigm treats material culture as a generic rather than a substantive factor in unequal pasts. We question this framing, while suggesting that the Gini coefficient can prompt a deeper exploration of value. Our study grows from multi-material evaluation of inequality at Çatalhöyük, Turkey, where we use the Gini coefficient to scrutinize distributions of burial practices among houses. To the expectations of the property paradigm, the result is unintuitive, becoming slightly more equal despite rising social complexity. We explore possible explanations for this result, each pointing to a more substantive link between past futures and differentiated lives as a framework for archaeologies of inequality.
Right. So once again, even the inequality isn't like straight lined the way Karl Marx or even I would have
Right.
thought.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean it wasn't there. It just means
Right.
that it seems, and like I told you, it does seem even like after 8,000, you start get like 90 people get cracks in the head, which I still think could be a scepter, but they say could be clay balls. Well, it could be that too.
Okay.
But anyways, the thought is that in a sense a leader is cracking people in the heads and trying to make rule, or whatever.
Right.
And then Çatalhöyük, everybody leaves. Like shortly after that, like everyone leaves. So there's going back to my thinking that someone tried to like be a full-on leader and whatever, and people
and then everybody's like, "No, we're out.
We're out. We're in every which way but loose." No, they went south to Israel and then into Egypt, and they went to more of them went west into the Balkans, and then from there to Germany and whatever.
Okay.
So.
Very cool. Primitive communism. Did it ever exist? From 11, I guess this is October 11th, 2021 by Connor
It's some kind
Bostick.
of center left thing or left individualist or so. I don't know. He wrote a thing in a sense saying he didn't totally agree with the communism. I just added it so that people also can go look it up.
Right.
But my point is that there is some. So it's not a question of is there, it's how spread is it, or how
right.
That would be more accurate. So it's not accurate when people say, well, all the things did this. No, that's not accurate.
Right. Yeah.
But it is inaccurate to say it never was or isn't still.
Right.
That would be also inaccurate.
Yeah. A review of The Dawn of Everything, A New History of Humanity by David Graeber and David Wengrow, and an explanation of why the concept of primitive communism is mistaken. For some years now, the evidence has been growing for a prehistory of humanity that shows an extraordinary richness, both in terms of material production, like massive settlements of thousands of people, and in terms of cultural exchanges over immense distances. It will come as a surprise to everyone on the left who held to the undeveloped human labor model for the origin of classes. Just as it came as a surprise to me to read of sites like Çatalhöyük in modern-day Turkey, where perhaps 10,000 people flourished around 7,000 BCE. So, and again, like you say, there's a link for this from the independentleft.ie, primitive communism. Might be worth a read just to see. Even if you don't end up agreeing with this guy, it might be.
Well, like I said, that's why
seems
I
interesting.
said my answer at the beginning, remember, was yes and no.
Yeah. Yes and no, not yes or no.
Right. But now that you've understood my position a little more, you understand that it does exist. So I won't accept that people say it doesn't.
Yeah.
Unless they're just idiots and bigots or something or whatever.
They've just decided to ignore the stuff that shows that it did exist in some places.
And it's still going on. I mean,
yeah. There is evidence of violent injuries at Neolithic Çatalhöyük, thought by some as evidence of control by some type of leader or leaders. The Çatalhöyük community presents a compelling record of elevated levels of interpersonal violence represented by healed cranial depressed fractures. This is the skull cracks that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Right? In 25 individuals of the sample of 93 crania analyzed in an ongoing study. The morphology of the lesions suggests that these injuries were caused by blows to the head involving hard, round objects. A comparison of these data with archaeological findings from the site suggests that scores of hardened clay balls recovered from house and other contexts may have been the weapon of choice.
So pause for a second.
Yep.
I know people have no idea what that is. Now, they could have been used as slingshots, but that's probably not what they were used for as the main thing. I'm not saying that they can't also do that. You can take a iron skillet and crack someone in the head and kill them. That's not really what its function is, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I'm just making a point. Because they say, well, they could be done as slingshots. Well, so can an iron skillet kill someone? I mean, that's, not my favorite.
It's not technically a weapon, though, right?
Exactly. So what I think is that they would, I don't know exactly, but it's something close to this. They take the stone balls and they heat them up, and then they drop them in water to make soup or whatever,
right?
Or to heat things up. They put them, in a sense, as an aid in cooking or whatever.
Okay.
Or something like that. They could also have other purpose, but I personally, I don't say skeptical, but I don't have a strong opinion that it's, or agreement, I should say, or I have a weak disagreement. I don't know if it's accurate to say they were throwing those balls at people.
Right.
and like I said, my thinking is we already know that 11,000 years ago at Korkatepe, so way before this 9,000-year-old Çatalhöyük to 9,000 to 7,500,
right?
Way before that, there is stone maces used,
right?
And like I said, it's possible they were already cracking people in the head or threatening that or hitting them in the body or something,
right?
With that, not to kill them, but to, like, I'm a leader, you fucking do what I say, or crack you in the head,
submission or what have you,
right? Yeah. So, but I don't know if Korkatepe, that they were using it for that. I don't know.
Okay.
But because my thinking is, if it wasn't that, I have an idea that it maybe started as a shaman drum.
Okay.
In a sense.
Interesting.
Boom, boom, and then I'm the leader. I'm the one that talks to the deities. I make, because it's also the priest kings of Sumerian, like we're going to talk about. Remember, they are in a sense emissaries for the deity, and sometimes they actually marry the deity. Right? Sounds similar, right?
Yeah.
Shamanism. They're marrying, right? They're marrying the because they
spirits
actually
or what have you. Yeah.
Right. They have sex with a priestess, and that's supposed to be an embodying of having sex or marrying, say Isis or whoever. I'm just saying that's not out of it. So once you understand shaman, you're like, wait a minute, I've heard that before.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So they say, like here, like you were saying, clay balls are especially well suited for sling propulsion, and their size and shape would fit the general morphology of the cranial injuries observed in the Çatalhöyük victims. But we're not convinced by that.
Well,
could also be something else.
I don't think that's. Here's the other thing too: the slingshots are always hitting him in the head. They're not hitting any other places. Not breaking other.
Yeah.
And they're always able to do it soft enough that it doesn't cause damage,
right?
Until they die. Because if you hit someone in a slingshot, it can be done strong enough to kill someone. Like that stupid story in the Bible about David and Goliath and the fucking stone to the head.
Yeah.
Generally, it's not something you come back from. But the fact that all of these are basically healed, or majority of them, whatever.
Right.
It doesn't. Somehow they're doing it so they're able to control it. How do you control something you fling it at people? Even if let's just say that we buy that somehow they're related, well, then I would buy more that someone picked it up in their hand and it did it with in their hand, like hitting you in the head with a rock.
Right.
Because they can control it is my point. Because they're not trying to. So you get my point.
Yep, for sure.
That's why I feel, yeah.
Yeah.
The
No, I
sling.
hear you.
I don't think they were throwing slings as how they hit them in the head. Now, that's all I'm saying is it's possible that I think they might have used something else because they could have used wood. Like there's
Right.
a shillelagh. You ever heard of that?
Yep. Yep.
Which is a wood stick with a knob on the end that you hit people with.
Yep.
I'm just saying. And just so you know, they found a 5,000-year-old wood club that they know people got cracked in the head with in Germany or somewhere over there, wherever, somewhere in Europe. Let's just say it's like 5,500 years old.
Wow.
It's like broken up, but they can put it back together and realize, wow, this is a freaking.
This is a hit and stick.
Yeah, definitely. So all I'm saying is we don't. The assumption is only that because this is what I was just saying about the archaeology at 9,000 is not probably going to find wood.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So they're just going, oh, look, there's clay balls, and that they're using for cooking. I think these are that they put them in slings and then threw them at people's heads, and they all were so skilled at this that no one ever died.
Right.
Yeah.
All the head. It was the soft hitting with it, I guess.
But you get my point. It does when you say it out loud. It doesn't strike me as the answer. I think that some leader, like they say at the beginning, a leader has a stick and cracks you because then he can do not as hard.
Yeah,
they can control it more.
Yeah,
in a sense. So.
Yep. The demographic distribution of the injuries is highly patterned. Slightly more females than males are affected overall, 13 versus 10, respectively for crania with a clear sex identification. 12 of the 93, or 13%, were injury recidivists, having sustained anywhere from 2 to 5 injuries over a span of time.
So it sounds like we're doing slingshots and you get 5 shots and all 5 did not kill you?
No, it definitely sounds like somebody's just like, whack.
Right. See what I'm saying? You see why I don't buy the slingshot? I think that you should just throw it. Even if they hit them with the actual clay ball, you're not throwing it at people where you can't control. Hit them 5 times and never kill them. Come on.
Yeah, it seems. Yeah, these individuals needed corrective whacking over multiple times.
Yeah.
Or else they wouldn't fall in line.
Me and Cory got lots of lumps on our heads.
That's right.
Anarchists would not do well in that kind of society, I don't think.
They'd be examining our skulls and going, holy shit, what's going on with this guy?
Look at 13 cracks in this guy's skull.
Yeah. Those with some of the highest recurrent injuries were adult females. Yeah. And they weren't subservient enough, perhaps.
They could that could be also some domestic abuse. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it very
well
well
could. Or it could be that trying to make a harem and where you because it could have had poly, but it also could have been, a harem where someone just forces sex and cracks people in the head. And I mean, sick things like that have happened all throughout history.
Yeah, for sure. For those victims, trauma predominates on the superior and posterior surfaces of their cranial vaults, suggesting that those women affected by the interpersonal violence were not facing their assailants when struck. Chronologically, frequencies of the cranial injuries are in line with the hypothesis of an increase in interpersonal violence during the Middle Period due to the changes in population size and density. An argument can be made for elevated stress and conflict within the community. His finding matches those from a number of settings today and in the archaeological past, confirming the association between violence and demographic pressure. On the other hand, the high degree of variation in trauma frequencies documented in past and present communities living in crowded settings does not, by itself, explain the variation in cranial trauma at Çatalhöyük. However, the association between social circumstances and interpersonal violence is compelling, especially in the development of a behavioral reconstruction in a crowded community and one engaged in relatively high-intensity farming.
Right, but so that's all I wanted to show why I don't agree with, calling that anarcho-communism.
Right, yeah. Yeah. What happened to Turkey's ancient utopia? Turkey's Neolithic city of Çatalhöyük may have been an orderly society built on tolerance and equality until it fell apart. The cranium had a depressed fracture, says Nuzel. We started going through the other remains looking for more. He and Glenn Cross found dozens of skulls with similar wounds, all showing a consistent pattern of injury to the top back of the skull. The pattern of the wounds suggests that most of them were inflicted by thrown projectiles, but all of them were healed, meaning they were not fatal. They speculate that the attacks that caused the injuries were meant only to stun, perhaps to control wayward members of the group, or to abduct outsiders as wives or slaves. In line with Hodder's theory, the skulls with this characteristic were found primarily in later levels of the site, when more independence and differentiation between households started to emerge. Hodder speculates that with these inequalities potentially creating new tensions among the community's members, non-fatal violence may have been a means to keep everyone in check and prevent or diffuse full-fledged conflicts that could break the settlement apart. The head wounds, in a way, confirm the idea of a controlled society, Hodder says. They suggest that violence was contained and regulated, not something that led to a large-scale killing. Yeah. Again, it's another example of why it seems clear that Çatalhöyük may not have been as egalitarian as we would like.
Well, and that's why I wanted to address this, because I feel like that there's this competition of black and white thinking of yes or no.
Right.
It's either, everywhere had communism primitively or nobody did. That's just wrong.
Yeah. We know that's not how it works.
So I wanted to clarify and show where I agreed and where I don't agree. And then kind of a little bit of why.
Right. And that's the end of our pre-show script.
Yay! But didn't we learn some good things?
Yeah, for sure. The like you say, like it seems pretty obvious that there was some level of primitive communism that existed, but also maybe not every example that was perfect, and maybe
Right.
Yeah, maybe it wasn't utopia, but it was.
Well, but doesn't this give you a more in-depth thing? Because if you read that before, you wouldn't know if he's right or wrong, or what your opinion would be.
That's right.
And now, even if you disagree with me, at least you have an opinion to base it on.
Right. Yeah. There's information there. Like it's like the book Dawn of Everything, or like Murray Bookchin's stuff on prehistory or prehistoric cultures. Like they're both pretty good in various ways, and it's good to have that kind of perspective. But also you need to listen to their critics too, right? Like we have to be open to knowing that these guys, they didn't have all the information all the time. And like, there's, like you said, that one paper that we read the abstract of, that's a pretty new paper. Murray Bookchin has been dead for many, many years. So,
right. So, and also I want to say, I'm not critiquing his anarchism or communism.
Right. Yeah. And social ecology is still a great way of looking at the world. But.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, because you're saying I'm critic. I'm not saying I'm a critic. No. I'm just saying I disagree. That's all I'm saying. I'm just saying I disagree with calling Çatalhöyük a good example of primitive communism. From what I know, I wouldn't say that.
Right. But I've seen a number of like people who have been really very critical of Graeber and Wengrow's book, The Dawn of Everything. I've seen a few videos, and I've read a few articles, and you I think shared me a paper with an archaeologist paper. There's a lot of like really thoughtful and intelligent criticism of the book and some of the things that were in it. And it's important that as an honest person, I have to be able to take that in and go, okay, well, maybe I can't just, take that book whole cloth and say, this is all good. Right. Like I have to be able to like examine it and understand that there are people who disagree.
I wasn't saying everything in that book is bad. I just don't agree with some of the things that I've heard, which
makes perfect sense.
Right. And now that's also the thing. I don't try to just say, well, I think this, and you need to just trust Damien. I want you to, as you know, I even though the archaeologist doesn't think I tell you guys enough, which I think Cory would probably say I already tell too much.
We're not all archaeologists out here, so this is already a lot of information for regular people.
Yeah, so I mean, it could be even more complicated, but yeah. But like I said, that's fine. I'm not doing this also for entertainment. Like, in other words, some of these, like the person who made this video we're going to be doing real soon on, the Sumerians, they're doing it for history and kind of entertainment. That's not what I'm doing.
Right.
I'm trying to do leftist analysis in a sense of culture and then exploration for people to learn culture. So like I said, they can get more compassion, more understanding, more accuracy.
Yeah.
And also to the same thing, like you said, though, I am supporting primitive communism. I don't like the word primitive, but
right. Yeah. Even it's funny.
Yeah.
Even talking to my partner, we're talking about some of the traditions that have been still exist in Burundi, and she's talking about. She's like, the country I come from is so primitive, and I'm like, I don't really like using that word.
Yeah, I don't either.
I don't like it. It's not. I don't like it at all. It seems so judgy, right? Like it's so.
It is judgy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't. I would say more like prehistoric communism.
Yeah, or like
prehistoric, anarchism. I don't.
Or if a particular thing is like maybe like an ignorant thing, or like it's maybe it's a bad practice in general, right? Like you can just say that this is a bad thing to do.
I do. Like I told you about those totemists that grabbed what they thought were demon-possessed women and started hitting them in the head with machetes,
right?
As a way to, and then the guy filming it asked him, "Well, are they bad people?" And they said, "No, they're victims. They're victims of the bad spirits that's possessing them."
Yeah, and this is how you
make them
bad
come
practice.
Out.
This is bad way to deal with.
Like, God, you're gonna like literally kill people and torture them.
Yeah.
And
that, I mean, I don't want to throw like very like I don't want to throw any culture or any person or any group of people under the bus when it comes to like belief in witchcraft, but I really feel like the idea that somebody's a witch, like it places them in a position where they can be persecuted and damaged and harmed in ways that are that I consider to be inhumane and inhuman.
Totally.
So
it was in fact, it was very hard for me to watch it. I watched it because I do want to have a better understanding of a whole bunch of things. Like I said, that's my thing. My thing is not just to debunk religion. I want to understand also what is religion. People, like the atheists will say, "Oh, I know religion." You don't know jack shit.
You might know a little bit about
Christianity. Doesn't mean you know religion.
Yeah, that's right. You know a little bit about Christianity. You don't know religion.
Yeah.
But
and so people don't even realize they have biases, even as an atheist. That they have no, like I should be more popular for how much I support atheism, and I explain religion, all over the world, and yet I'm not more popular. Why? Because they think they don't need to learn it.
Yeah.
Talk about a bias.
Yeah. It's very strange, like to think that like because everybody wants their previous held ideas confirmed, right? Like nobody wants to be challenged,
right?
So the idea that like, okay, well, not all religions are the same, and it's all kind of there's a lot of balance, like different kind of levels and kind of nuances and different beliefs and practices, and like you have to acknowledge that this isn't all just things you can lump into one basket.
Exactly. and because it's easy to generalize, we like to do it, but often generalizations are wrong.
Yeah.
Or they're very, far from, they're not misleading, maybe intentionally, but they're very far from an accurate picture.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm not against the idea that I should try to be accurate when I talk about archaeology. I do try to be accurate. I just don't tell you every single little freaking thing because there's a lot of freaking shit. And if you just get imagine to me, if you could just get the we're offering these videos to learn, you would be way above most people.
Right. Yeah.
Already. So I mean, yeah, and I totally agree. If you want to go learn about everything I talk about in a way more in depth, there is plenty of books and plenty of videos and stuff. You will be never
enjoy spending the next 15 years.
Yeah. So I mean, go ahead.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
like I said, after learning this stuff, I realized, wow, this stuff actually helps me support my leftist thinking, my anarchist thinking, in a way that I think is helpful, because people are both learning, growing, developing, not just getting propaganda that I want to give about why anarchism is good or why socialism is good or something, or even how to do it, but to get a real foundation of ethics and morality of how to deal in the world. Because let's just say we eventually do get anarchists in the whole world. Wouldn't it be great if we didn't have a bigoted start?
In fact, I would say that that's one of the main ways to achieve anarchism worldwide, is by eliminating as many bigotries as we can. So
see, and so then you get my thinking. It's not that I want to force random history knowledge on people.
Right.
It's that if you can get some of this history knowledge and see the context, it changes you into a global thinker, to me, which is my goal, because then you're really, to me, more of an anarchist.
Yep.
Without even you trying, you've already been infected.
Yeah, that's right. So I guess we might as well get our
video,
our intro video.
Last time you can throw it away.
That's right. Yeah, here. So our first video is the one that, I hope this is the right one.
Shows where we're at.
By around 7,000 to 6,000 BC, people began to move south along the Tigris and Euphrates rivers to what were by then the fertile floodplains of Mesopotamia, specifically in the land that today makes up most of Iraq and parts of northern Syria. Mesopotamia, which means land between rivers, is the Greek name for the area, and it's here that early farms began to really take root on a much larger scale.
All right, so that's where we are at.
Correct.
And then this is the video for
The end of the last true Sumerian state also resulted in the phasing out of many, though not all, aspects of Sumerian culture and identity in Mesopotamia. Without state support, the use of Sumerian as both the official and common language began to decline rapidly. This was in great part due to the influx of new, non-Sumerian peoples into Mesopotamia, which altered the ethnic and linguistic makeup of Sumer. A new civilization, which we call Babylonian, was developing that essentially combined the Sumerian and Akkadian worlds with those of the newcomers to the region, such as the Amorites. In the first 2 centuries...
Sorry, what was that?
The Semitic peoples came in, is what, just so people know. Once again, Semitic is not limited to just people from, Israel or Hebrew or whatever.
Centuries after the fall of the Third Dynasty of Ur, Mesopotamia was divided up into smaller kingdoms and petty states, many of which were ruled by various Amorite clans. Since their language was a close cousin of Akkadian, the latter became even more widespread throughout Mesopotamia, and by 1800 BC, Sumerian ceased to exist as a spoken language, though it was still used by scribes as a scholarly and religious one. For this reason, it was taught in scribal schools perhaps up until the 2nd or 1st century BC. And of course, the Sumerian influence on later Babylonian and ancient Assyrian religion and culture pervaded both societies throughout their existence. And not just these two civilizations, we ourselves are indebted to the Sumerians, who were the first to develop more sophisticated farming techniques, tools like the plow, large-scale urban planning, the mass production of everyday items such as pottery and textiles, mathematics and accounting, and of course, probably their most famous contribution, the art of writing.
All right.
And war. No.
And war. Yeah. All right. So that's
because they had some of the first standing armies in the world.
right.
So that concept, the empires need armies, is pretty much a Mesopotamian,
Kind of came from that, eh?
Yeah.
So we're on show 12, Mesopotamian State Force and the Aftermath and Legacy of Sumer. Sumer was from 4500 to 1900 BCE, or 6,522 years ago, to 3,922 years ago. Sumer is the earliest known civilization in the historical region of southern Mesopotamia, or south-central Iraq, emerging during the Copper Age.
There you go.
And early Bronze Age.
You learned something since you've been with me.
I learned that I can't pronounce this word, so I just have to fill it in with Copper Age.
Paleolithic or whatever, Chalcolithic.
Yeah, Chalcolithic?
Chalcolithic. Yeah.
Between the 6th and 5th millennium BCE. It is also one of the first civilizations in the world, along with ancient Egypt, Elam, and the Karal Supe civilization, the Indus Valley civilization, the Minoan civilization, and ancient China. Living along the valleys of the Tigris and Euphrates.
Yeah, once again, don't have to use that how to spell things or pronounce them, I mean.
Sumerian farmers grew an abundance of grain and other crops, the surplus from which enabled them to form urban settlements. Proto-writing dates back before 3000 BCE, or 5,023 years ago. The earliest texts come from the cities of Uruk and Jemdet Nasser, and date to between 3,500 to 3,000 BCE, or 5,523 years ago to 5,023 years ago. The term Sumer is the name given to the language spoken by the Sumerians, the ancient non-Semitic speaking inhabitants of southern Mesopotamia, by their successors, the East Semitic speaking Akkadians. The Sumerians themselves referred to their land as Kengir, the country of the noble lords, as seen in their inscriptions.
So that doesn't sound like primitive communism either.
No, that sounds like definitely there's a hierarchy there, that's for sure.
Yeah.
The origin of the Sumerians is not known, but the people of Sumer referred to themselves as black-headed ones or the black-headed people. For example, the Sumerian king Shogi described himself as the king of the four quarters, the pastor of the black-headed people. The Akkadians also called the Sumerians black-headed people, or Salmat Kakadi, in the Semitic Akkadian language. The Akkadian word Sumer may represent the geographical name in dialect, but the phonological development leading to the Akkadian term Sumeru is uncertain. Hebrew Sin-Ar, Egyptian Singar, and Hittite Sanhar, all referring to southern Mesopotamia, could be the Western variants of Sumer. Sumerian origins. Most historians have suggested that Sumer was first permanently settled between 5,500 to 4,000 BCE, or 7,523 years ago to 6,023 years ago, by a West Asian people who spoke the Sumerian language, pointing to the names of cities, rivers, basic occupations, etc. as evidence, and non-Semitic and non-Indo-European agglutinative language isolate. In contrast to its Semitic neighbors, it was not an inflected language. Others have suggested that the Sumerians were a North African people who migrated from the Green Sahara into the Middle East and were responsible for the spread of farming in the Middle East. However, the evidence strongly suggesting the first farmers originated from the Fertile Crescent, this suggestion is often discarded. Although not specifically discussing Sumerians, Lazaridis et al. 2016 have suggested a partial North African origin for some pre-Semitic cultures of the Middle East, particularly Natufians.
Right, but Natufians also have 50% of their DNA is R, which comes from Siberia. So they're not only Africans, even if that is accurate, and also North Africans. Even at that point, after 30,000, U6 DNA went from Siberia 45,000 years way up in the north, there like Russia, comes all the way down through Israel and into basically, I guess, Egypt, and then goes all the way across to Morocco.
Okay.
But what hits Morocco is U6A, which is after 20,000. So it hits like Egypt and some of, I don't know what probably the Sahara level, area to that, like Libya or whatever. I'd have to think about it, look on a map, or I have a thing actually that shows it, but they come in and then another branch continues and it says 20,000 to, I think it's 13,000 or something. And then people from the Nufians go all the way or bring more stuff across. And then people come at like 8 or 9 or 10,000 also coming in. So multiple, but I'm going to just to explain this is because everyone always thinks when you use the word Africa that the people are all the same color and the same culture and stuff.
Right.
How people are fucking have cartoon versions of shit.
Yeah.
That's fucking. I'm just trying to say that's absolutely not correct.
Yeah.
People came down that had been in Europe, and did it multiple times, especially North Africa. Not always real far down, but North Africa for sure. They were definitely. And then it is also not inaccurate that some of those people then go the other way. In a sense, go from Africa, North Africa and stuff into the. I don't disagree with that either.
Right.
But,
yeah. So, it's like
I'm just trying to help people understand. Yeah. And then I do know another branch came, by 13 to 15,000 came in after the 30,000 one who had already come by.
Okay.
And brought. So people understand. We talked about it last time. R, it goes P1 splits into two things, Q and R, and then R splits into U. This is what I was saying. Okay. So since I feel that everything after P went through probably, well, P1 as opposed to P goes to China. P1 cuts across Central Eurasia up to Siberia in a sense, and once up there, and then it splits somewhere in Central Siberia or Central Asia. That's when that split to me is the shamanism starts. Mm-hmm. Those people, once they got there and then diversified, their first diversification, to me they have shamanism. Then they bring it back to Europe, and Q goes to the Americas, in a sense. So, yeah.
Okay.
You're like, see, once again, that was way too complicated right now.
I'm trying to follow.
And it's easier to look at pictures on maps and stuff.
Yeah. So. Yeah, like that day we watched that video where it showed all the different stuff going into like various regions of Ukraine and whatnot and Russia.
Right. See, that helped, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's complicated and people are like, oh, well, you can't know. Yeah, well, no, there is people that know. I just wrote a blog. An archaeologist told me, so I asked a question because I was trying to figure out, because it's not, or he knew, but I don't deal with that. So I know stuff, but I didn't. I said, did Çatalhöyük, I know they had pottery at a certain point, but I had only seen pottery after 8,200 or somewhere close to that. Not that you would know, but there's an 8,200 climate event that happens where the temperature changes drastically.
Okay.
And so all of a sudden crops aren't as good and stuff. So if pottery is built after that, there was a thought that, by me especially, that there could have been a movement of people because now they can't be somewhere else because it's too
Right.
cold.
Yeah.
So they left. Anyways, he goes, oh no, they had pottery at 10, 11,000 before this site before Channelhoek. I didn't know that. In fact, if you go look at the thing now, it says the pre-pottery didn't happen until after 9,000. So I was like, oh, wow, this is new.
Yeah.
And I said, because I was feeling that N brought from China goes into the Middle East by about 10,000 and brought pottery.
Right.
Or whatever, you know. So then I thought, well, I wonder what the DNA is at that site that he said. And so I went and looked. Guess what? One of the things, DNA at that site. Damien felt that nDNA was moving pottery around. They have N1A DNA at
Right.
10,500.
Huh.
And then that same nDNA shows up at Channelhoek. Actually, Atheist-Humanist-Leftist first, which is considered to be also Channelhoek.
Okay.
So the oldest one has it. Then the next one has it. Then Channelhoek has it. And then it goes into Europe, and there's no N1 in Europe. And then all of a sudden, when even the one that goes to Germany brings N1 for the first time and brings pottery. And then pottery goes south, okay, from the Balkans after leaving Western, Turkey, goes south to Greece, goes to Sardinia and Italy and, whatever, also carries in.
Huh.
Must be just, I know, like I told you before, just have absolute guess, right? They would keep doing this. But,
right. Yeah.
Anyways, but at first, because he said, oh, pottery is started several different places. Now, and there's no connection. I went, so I made a blog that disagrees with that, but it gives the DNA and why.
Right.
And at first he didn't like how I had phrased it, like explained, these people became these people. So I told him I appreciate it. I'm not trying to. If you want me to make it a little more accurate or whatever, I will do that. And so I did. I changed the title, but not the inside. Just the title.
Right.
Just to clarify that his argument wasn't my inside was bad. It was that he didn't like how I used the title. That's
yeah. Well,
so I rewrote the title, and now it's a very long, archaeologically influenced title. I'll read it to you. Ancient M DNA, meaning female, line DNA or XX line DNA. So is N1A1A1. So see, I'm even being more specific. Pottery from Turkey to Europe, ? People likely descended from Central Anatolians. I added that for the archaeologists.
Yep.
Populations with pottery and mDNA of N1A1A1,
Right.
such as, and then I give the one, Autoclo, Channelhoek spread to Central Europe through Northwest Anatolia, back for the archaeologists, thousands of years later. So,
not exactly a pithy title.
No, it was a pithy title. It was that this site from here goes to people in Europe? ?
Right.
He goes, that's not good. Do it this way. And I was like, yeah, okay. But it becomes a title that it sounds like
it's an article, but it's
book.
yeah.
Anyway.
The title is a paragraph on its own.
Right, but I still appreciate it. So I'm not saying that because he wanted me to be accurate, and I also want him to read it and then be accurate. That his thinking that everything had to be not connected in any way, everything is all brand new and original. I don't know that he has that opinion anymore.
Right.
Or he might have some new skepticism because of Damien's blog.
Yeah.
But he didn't say either way. Although he first said that I was totally wrong, and then he read it, and all he had complained is the title.
So yeah. I guess we could continue here.
Yes.
So after testing the genomes of Natufian and pre-pottery Neolithic culture bearers, alternatively, a recent 2013 genetic analysis of 4 ancient Mesopotamian skeletal DNA samples suggests an association of the Sumerians with Indus Valley civilization, possibly as a result of ancient Indus-Mesopotamia relations. According to some data, the Sumerians are associated with Hurrians and Urartians, and the Caucasus is considered their homeland. A prehistoric people who lived in the region before the Sumerians have been termed the Proto-Euphratians or Ubaidians, and are theorized to have evolved from the Samara culture of northern Mesopotamia.
And Samara culture is a pottery culture.
The Ubaidians, though never mentioned by the Sumerians themselves, are assumed by modern-day scholars to have been the first civilizing force in Sumer. They drained the marshes for agriculture, developed trade, and established industries including weaving, leatherwork, metalwork, masonry, and pottery. Some scholars contest the idea of a Proto-Euphratian language or one substrate language. They think the Sumerian language may originally have been that of the hunting and fishing peoples who lived in the marshland and the Eastern Arabia littoral region, and were part of the Arabian bifacial culture. Reliable historical records begin much later. There are none in Sumer of any kind that have been dated before Embargesi in the early dynastic 1. Juris Zarins believes that the Sumerians lived along the coast of Eastern Arabia, today's Persian Gulf region, before it was flooded at the end of the Ice Age. Sumerian civilization took form in the Uruk period, 4th millennium BCE, or around 6,000 to 5,000 years ago, continuing into Jemdet Nasser and early dynastic periods. The Sumerians progressively lost control to the Semitic states from the northwest. Sumer was conquered by the Semitic-speaking kings of the Akkadian Empire around 2270 BCE, or 4,293 years ago, in short chronology. But Sumerian continued as a sacred language. Native Sumerian rule re-emerged for about a century in the 3rd dynasty of Ur at approximately 2100 to 2000 BCE, or 4,123 years ago to 4,023 years ago. But the Akkadian language also remained in use for some time. The Sumerian city of Eridu on the coast of the Persian Gulf is considered to have been one of the oldest cities, where 3 separate cultures may have fused: that of peasant Ubaidian farmers living in mud brick huts and practicing irrigation, that of mobile nomadic Semitic pastoralists living in black tents and following herds of sheep and goats, and that of fisherfolk living in reed huts in the marshlands, who may have been the ancestors of the Sumerians.
Right. So once again, just showing it that things are often way more complex. That's always laugh when people say that my stuff is too complex. I'm like, real history is even worse.
Right, eh? Yeah.
I'm giving you the cliff notes. What are you talking about?
Yeah. City-states in Mesopotamia. Further information, a list of cities of the ancient Near East and geography of Mesopotamia. In the late 4th millennium BCE, Sumer was divided into many independent city-states, which were divided by canals and boundary stones. Each was centered on a temple dedicated to the particular patron god or goddess of the city and ruled over by a priestly governor, or ensi, or a king, lugal, who was intimately tied to the city's religious rites. The first 5 cities to have exercised pre-dynastic kingship before the flood. 1, Eridu, whose ruler was Tel Abu Shahrain. 2 was Bad Tibira, whose ruler was probably Tel al-Madain. 3 was Larak I. 4 was Sipar, under Tel Abu Haba. And 5 was Shurupak, under Tel Farah. There were other principal
Tel
cities.
is a mound of cultural cities that have been, put on top of each other.
Okay. Other principal cities, there's 1, Uruk, and then it says Warka. 2 was Kish, Tel Himir, and Inghara. 3 is Ur and Tel al-Makayer. 4 is Nippur and Afak. 5 is Lagash or Tel al-Hiba. 6 is Girsu under Tello or Tel-O with an H on the end. 7 is Uma or Tel Joka, and 8 is Hamzi. 9, Adab or Tel Bismaya. 10 is Mari or Tel Hariri. Yep. 11 is Akshak. 12 is Akkad. 13 Isin or which is Ishan al-Bariyat. 14 is Larsa, Tel as Sankara. Also, there's a note here. It says location uncertain, or also an outlying city in northern Mesopotamia. And then there's some minor cities from south to north. Kuara, or Tel al-Lam. Zabala, Tel Ibzik. Kisura, Tel Abu Hatab. Marad, or Tel Wanat es Sadum. Dilbat, or Tel Ed Duliam. Borsippa, or Birs Nimrud. Kutha, or Tel Ibrahim, or Dur al Badra. Ashnuna, or Tel Asmar, and Nagar at Tel Brak. There's a note here, an outlying city in northern Mesopotamia for Nagar. Apart from Mari, which lies full 330 kilometers or 205 miles northwest of Agade, but which is credited in the king list as having exercised kingship in the early dynastic II period, and Nagar, an outpost, these cities are all in the Euphrates-Tigris alluvial plain, south of Baghdad, in what we are now the Babil, Diyala, Wasit, D. Kar, Basra, Al-Muthana, and Al-Qadisiyah, governorates of Iraq. The Sumerian city-states rose to power during the prehistoric Ubaid and Uruk periods. Sumerian written history reaches back to the 27th century BCE and before, but the historical record remains obscure until the early dynastic III period, 23rd century BCE, when a now deciphered syllabary writing system was developed, which has allowed archaeologists to read contemporary records and inscriptions. The Akkadian Empire was the first state that successfully united larger parts of Mesopotamia in the 23rd century BCE. After the Gutian period, the Ur-III kingdom similarly united parts of northern and southern Mesopotamia.
I always think it's interesting how they say it as if everyone's so glad to finally be unified.
Right.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's like saying the Native Americans are so glad that America took all their cultures that were so different and varied, smashed them all together, and called them one.
Yeah, that's right. They're united now. What?
They should be happy, right?
Yeah, that's right.
In fact, isn't that the goal? Which I feel like sometimes how they state stuff, it almost sounds like they think like this. They finally reached their epitome, what they should do or something. It reminds me of non-anarchists reading shit and thinking how wonderful when empires take over.
Right. Yeah. That's not good, actually.
I doubt that regular people were super happy that they were taken over.
Yeah, that's right.
Because guess what? That meant taxes.
And probably like a whole different kind of set of rules being imposed on you that you didn't know until you broke a rule or what have you.
Right, exactly.
So, yeah. It ended in the face of Amorite incursions at the beginning of the second millennium BCE. The Amorite dynasty of Isin persisted until 1700 BCE, or 3,723 years ago, when Mesopotamia was united under Babylonian rule. The Sumerians were eventually absorbed into the Akkadian or Assyrio-Babylonian population. The Ubaid period was from 6,500 to 4,100 BCE, and they had pottery, Neolithic to Chalcolithic.
Copper Age.
Copper Age. Yeah. The Uruk period, 4,100 to 2,900 BCE, from the late Chalcolithic or Copper Age to early Bronze Age. Uruk, I'm going to guess that's 14-5. Yeah. 4,100 to 3,300 BCE. And Uruk 4 period, 3,300 to 3,100 BCE. Jemdet Nasser period, Uruk 3, 3,100 to 2,900 BCE. The early dynastic period, early Bronze Age 2 to 4. Early dynastic period 1, 2,900 to 2,800 BCE. Early dynastic 2 period, 2,800 to 2,600 BCE. Gilgamesh was there. Early dynastic. What's that?
May have been there because Gilgamesh could have also been a fictional character.
Right. That's
So,
right. Yeah,
it's possible. That. Maybe it was one. Maybe he never was a king.
Yeah, might never have been there, but
yeah,
that's where he's supposed to have been.
Right. Well, that's one of the claims. Yeah.
Early
a deified king, but also never existed. So
yeah. So who knows? Early dynastic 3A period, 2,600 to 2,500 BCE, and the early dynastic 3B period, 2,500 to 2,334 BCE. Akkadian Empire period, 2,334 to 2,218 BCE, and that's when Sargon was the ruler. Gutian period, 2,218 to 2047 BCE, and Ur 3 period, 2047 to 1940 BCE. Sumer's fall and transmission. This period is generally taken to coincide with a major shift in population from southern Mesopotamia toward the north. Ecologically, the agricultural productivity of the Sumerian lands was being compromised as a result of rising salinity. Soil salinity in this region had long been recognized as a major problem. Poorly drained, irrigated soils in an arid climate with high levels of evaporation led to buildup of dissolved salts in the soil, eventually reducing agricultural yields severely. During the Akkadian and Ur 3 phases, there was a shift from the cultivation of wheat to the more salt-tolerant barley, but this was insufficient, and during the period from 2100 to 1700 BCE, or 4123 to 3723 years ago, it is estimated that the population in this area declined by nearly 3/5. This greatly upset the balance of power within the region, weakening the areas where Sumerian was spoken and comparatively strengthening those where Akkadian was the major language. Henceforth, Sumerian would remain only a literary and liturgical language, similar to the position occupied by Latin in medieval Europe. Following an Elamite invasion and sack of Ur during the rule of Ibn Sin, 2028 to 2004 BCE, or 4051 to 4027 years ago, Sumer came under Amorite rule, taken to introduce the Middle Bronze Age. The independent Amorite states of the 20th to 18th centuries were summarized as the dynasty of Isin. In the Sumerian king list, ending with the rise of Babylonia under Hammurabi, circa 1800 BCE or 2,823 years ago. Later rulers who dominated Assyria and Babylonia occasionally assumed the old Sargonic title of King of Sumer and Akkad, such as Tukulti Ninurta I of Assyria after circa 1225 BCE. Sumer's population. Uruk, one of the So one of Sumer's largest cities has been estimated to have had a population of 50,000 to 80,000 at its height. Given the other cities in Sumer and the large agricultural population, a rough estimate for Sumer's population might be 0.8 million to 1.5 million. The world population at this time has been estimated at about 27 million. The Sumerians spoke a language isolate, but a number of linguists have claimed to be able to detect a substrate language of unknown classification beneath Sumerian because names of some of Sumer's major cities are not Sumerian, revealing influences of earlier inhabitants. However, the archaeological record shows clear, uninterrupted cultural continuity from the time of the early Ubaid period, 5300 to 4700 BCE, or 7,323 years ago to 6,723 years ago, settlements in southern Mesopotamia. The Sumerian people who settled here farmed the lands in this region that were made fertile by silt deposited by the Tigris and Euphrates. Some archaeologists have speculated that the original speakers of ancient Sumerian may have been farmers who moved down from the north of Mesopotamia after perfecting irrigation agriculture there. The Ubaid period pottery of southern Mesopotamia has been connected via Choga Mami transitional wear to the pottery of the Sumer period culture, circa 5700 to 4900 BCE, or 7,723 to 6,923 years ago. In the north, who were the first to practice a primitive form of irrigation agriculture along the Middle Tigris River and its tributaries. The connection is most clearly seen at Tel El Oueli, near Larsa, excavated by the French in the 1980s, where 8 levels yielded pre-Ubaid pottery resembling Sumerian ware. According to this theory, farming people spread down into southern Mesopotamia because they had developed a temple-centered social organization for mobilizing labor and technology for water control, enabling them to survive.
So primitive communism. No.
Right. Right. According to this theory, yeah, they spread because they had developed a temple-centered social organization.
In other words, elite, as I was making a joke.
Yeah.
Just so people know, that was a
sarcasm.
Sarcastic.
Yeah.
But anyways, but once again, that fact does not remove the fact that in other areas of the world, especially South Africa and stuff, in Central Africa, they did have it. So I mean, and I'm not saying it's the only place, but I mean, just it's like saying the whole world could not have it, and it still would be existing in South Africa.
Right.
So,
right.
To say it didn't exist is just foolishness.
Yeah. Enabling them to survive and prosper in a difficult environment. Others have suggested a continuity of Sumerians from the indigenous hunter-fisher folk traditions associated with the bifacial assemblages found on the Arabian littoral.
And bifaces are a stone tool that both sides are chipped.
Okay.
Instead of just one side, like an axe or something. So like a knife or an arrowhead or spear or whatever.
Okay. Juris Zarins believes the Sumerians may have been the people living in the Persian Gulf region before it flooded at the end of the last ice age. Social and family life in Sumer. In the early Sumerian period, the primitive pictograms suggest that pottery was very plentiful and the forms of the vases, bowls, and dishes were manifold. There were special jars for honey, butter, oil, and wine, which was probably made from dates. Some of the vases had pointed feet and stood on stands with crossed legs. Others were flat-bottomed and were set on square or rectangular frames of wood. The oil jars, and probably others also, were sealed with clay, precisely as in early Egypt. Vases and dishes of stone were made in imitation of those of clay. A feathered headdress was worn. Beds, stools, and chairs were used with carved legs resembling those of an ox. There were fireplaces and fire altars. Knives, drills, wedges, and and an instrument that looks like a saw were all known, while spears, bows, arrows, and daggers, but not swords, were employed in war. Tablets were used for writing purposes, daggers with metal blades and wooden handles were worn, and copper was hammered into plates, while necklaces or collars were made of gold. Time was reckoned in lunar months. There is considerable evidence concerning Sumerian music. Lyres, and flutes were...
so people know it. That's like a harp.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I'm just trying to help give a reference.
Yeah, if you play D&D, you should know it, but I still never learned how to pronounce it. So and flutes were played, among the best known examples being the lyres of Ur, inscriptions describing the reforms of King Urukagina of Lagash, circa 2350 BCE or 4,373 years ago, say that he abolished the former custom of polyandry in his country, prescribing that a woman who took multiple husbands be stoned with rocks upon which her crime had been written. Yeesh. Sumerian culture was male-dominated and stratified. The code
Which
of
you already got by the stoning of the women having multiple husbands.
right, eh? yeah. It's patriarchal. Go figure.
Yeah.
The Code of Ur-Nammu, the oldest such codification yet discovered, dating to the Ur-3, reveals a glimpse at a societal structure in late Sumerian law. Beneath the Lugal, or great man or king, all members of society belong to one of two basic strata, the Lu, or the free person, and the slave, male Arad, female Gime. The son of a Lu was called a Dumunita until he married. A woman, or a Munus, went from being a daughter, Dumumi, to a wife, Dam. Then if she outlived her husband, a widow, Numasu. And she would then remarry another man who was from the same tribe. Marriages were usually arranged by the parents of the bride and groom. Engagements were usually completed through the approval of contracts recorded on clay tablets. These marriages became legal as soon as the groom delivered a bridal gift to his bride's father. One Sumerian proverb describes the ideal happy marriage through the mouth of the husband who boasts that his wife has borne him 8 sons and is still eager to have sex. The Sumerians...
Like, how times have not changed.
No shit. Oh, geez. Yeah, very silly. The Sumerians generally seem to have discouraged premarital sex. Neither Sumerians nor Akkadians had a word exactly corresponding to the English word virginity, and the concept was expressed descriptively. For example, oh boy, yeah, it's
whatever.
Yeah, it basically it's a series of, I guess, what do you call it?
Don't worry, that's not, you already know, that's not the goal of these videos.
Anugia or La Nagbat, which means unflowered, undeflowered, deflowered. Yeah, because they're trying to describe virginity, so it's undeflowered is what it kind of means. Or gis nanzua, or never having known a penis. It is unclear whether terms such as cis situ in Akkadian medical texts indicate the hymen, but it appears that the intactness of the hymen was much less relevant to assessing a woman's virginity than in later cultures of the Near East, and in most assessments of virginity depended on the woman's own account. Well, I mean, at least on some level, that's rational.
Yeah.
Because the intactness of a hymen has nothing to do with virginity, really. So you got to just take, like it matters, honestly, but like it matters. But
it doesn't matter. I just stopped seeing it as mattering.
Yeah, it really doesn't.
They think it's special. I'm like, yeah, do you realize horses? I think all mammals, or lots of mammals, have hymens. So there's no, because this one person goes, oh, that was God's special thing with women. I'm like, yeah. Then why do
Virginity
you
is
keep the horses?
100% a social construct, right? Like,
What,
it's
what
all
kind of
nonsense.
nonsense are you talking? Like,
Yeah.
you really think only humans have it because of God? Go read a book.
Yeah. From the earliest records, the Sumerians had very relaxed attitudes towards sex, and their sexual mores were determined not by whether a sexual act was deemed immoral, but rather whether or not it made a person ritually unclean. The Sumerians widely believed that masturbation enhanced sexual potency, both for men and for women, and they frequently engaged in it, both alone and with their partners. The Sumerians did not regard anal sex as taboo either, and two priestesses were forbidden from producing offspring and subsequently engaged in anal sex as a method of birth control. Prostitution existed, but it is not clear if sacred prostitution did. Language and writing. A history of writing, Sumerian language, and cuneiform. The most important archaeological discoveries in Sumer are a large number of clay tablets written in cuneiform script. Sumerian writing is considered to be a great milestone in the development of humanity's ability to not only create historical records, but also in creating pieces of literature, both in the form of poetic epics and the stories, as well as prayers and laws. Although pictures, that is hieroglyphs, were used first, cuneiform and then ideograms, where symbols were made to represent ideas, soon followed. Triangular or wedge-shaped reeds were used to write on moist clay. A large body of hundreds of thousands of texts in the Sumerian language have survived, including personal and business letters, receipts, lexical lists, laws, hymns, prayers, stories, and daily records. Full libraries of clay tablets have been found. Monumental inscriptions and texts on different objects like statues or bricks are also very common. Many texts survive in multiple copies because they were repeatedly transcribed by scribes in training. Sumerian continued to be the language of religion and law in Mesopotamia long after Semitic speakers had become dominant. A prime example of cuneiform writing would be a lengthy poem that was discovered in the ruins of Uruk. Excuse me. The Epic of Gilgamesh was written in the standard Sumerian cuneiform. It tells of a king of the early dynastic II period named Gilgamesh, or Bilgamesh, in Sumerian. The story relates to the fictional adventures of Gilgamesh and his companion, Enkidu. It was laid out on several clay tablets and is thought to be the earliest known surviving example of fictional literature. The Sumerian language is generally regarded as a language isolate in linguistics because it belongs to no known language family. Akkadian, by contrast, belongs to the Semitic branch of the Afro-Asiatic languages.
There is some who think that the Sumerian might be connected to Caucasian, and by way that connected to Nadane in the Americas, and also the speakers of Siberia. So it
might not be totally an isolate.
Yeah, I would say that the reason I bring it up, because I don't bring up conspiracy theories unless I'm debunking them.
Yep.
Even though that sounds wild, I do know there is a pretty reasonable thing of Siberia, Central Siberia, connected to Nadane, and the DNA from there also goes to the Cossack Mountains. And the Sumerians had heavy gold trade and other trade with the Cossack Mountains. So it's not an unthinkable...
Right. It's not impossible that it actually...
Yeah, I'm not claiming right here that I know it is a fact.
Right.
But it certainly is... There's evidence that you have the DNA going from the Cossack Mountains to the people in the Americas matches, and also Siberia, and then you have, which we know the language is connected, and then we have a weird language in the Cossack Mountains in a sense that's an isolate. Then you have down in the Sumeria where it's an isolate, and yet they're interacting very heavily.
Right.
And also seems weird because it's like hundreds of miles in between. Why are these people even interacting with each other? And then there's another thing is there's some Sumerian loan words for metallurgy and stuff, and they absolutely did metallurgy in the Kazakh mountains. So they might have words that are originally from somewhere up there. I don't know exactly, and there's articles that say that they think there's a connection larger than that. Like they both drunk beer out of straws. Now, once again, we know they're interacting, so the cultural being spread back and forth isn't crazy. But once again, how are they doing that with no language?
Right. They have to share a language in some way,
or
right?
at least know each other's language. So then the fact that the DNA matches and someone says they think that it does those, a linguist I'm talking about, not don't think it's too far fetched, but I think when you add a lot of the archaeology and the DNA and the culture and linguistics together, it's easier to see that it's not impossible. I like I said, I don't know that's fact, but I it's possible to me. Now, some people say it also connects to the Basque people. I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
It's too far over there in Spain.
Oh.
You get been saying that. I don't think so. That would be my thing. Someone, even though I do think there's a connection maybe to the Cossacks, I don't think the Cossacks connects to Basque. That's my opinion.
Okay.
Or at least I haven't read enough to be convinced that that's a good. I feel like sometimes people want to connect things that are strange,
Yeah, for sure.
I don't. I find the one, because there's the DNA connection to the Native Americans,
right?
And then I find that there's a cultural and some linguistic sharing and item sharing between the Sumerians and the people in the Cossack Mountains. So that is way stronger than any kind of connection to Spain.
Right.
Like just because it's some odd language we don't know, it doesn't mean it came from there. I just.
Yep. No, that's right. Yeah.
So. Yeah. So Dane Caucasian, I only agree with some of it. I don't agree. I'm not saying I can't be convinced if someone has some better evidence, but I'm not convinced with the Spain stuff.
Okay.
I think it went to the Middle East and that's it.
Yep.
So that's
all right.
My thinking.
Yeah. No, I think that. Yeah. Because I mean, in all our stuff here, it calls it isolate, right? And it always emphasizes that it's not connected to anything. So.
Right, and I wanted to address it more particularly because if I say that I agree with Dane Caucasian, I do not say that I agree with Basque.
Right.
I like I said, I don't know why they're throwing that in there just because it's some weird thing. I mean, another isolate. I'm like, that I don't. But the Sumerian seems more legitimate to me.
Okay.
So. And I even more than that, the Caucasian language being connected to the Dane, I could really buy that. There's a DNA connection. So I can even, but that doesn't mean it has to be.
Right.
But I just saying that I find that like the most convincing.
It's much more plausible to you.
Yeah. And I like, why are we bringing up Spain?
There have been many failed attempts to connect Sumerian to other language families. It is an agglutinative language. In other words, morphemes, units of meaning, are added together to create words, unlike analytic languages where morphemes are purely added together to create sentences. Some authors have proposed that there may be evidence of a substratum or adstratum language for geographic features and various crafts and agricultural activities called variously Proto-Euphratean or Proto-Tigrian. But this is disputed by others. Understanding Sumerian texts today can be problematic. Most difficult are the earliest texts, which in many cases do not give the full grammatical structure of the language and seems to have been used as an aid memoire for knowledgeable scribes. Akkadian gradually replaced Sumerian as a spoken language somewhere around the turn of the third and the second millennium BCE. But Sumerian continued to be used as a sacred, ceremonial, literary, and scientific language in Babylonia and Assyria until the 1st century CE. The Sumerians introduced writing, and under their rule, the arts flourished. Their temples dedicated to such gods as to Inin, the goddess of fertility, or to Dumuzi, a kind of Sumerian Adonis, where huge edifices of mud brick made splendid by intricate mosaics of colored earth. The temples rose in staged towers, much as did the Tower of Babel, each formed a kind of artificial mountain, a stepping stone by which the gods could commute to earth. A design on a piece of pottery in early Mesopotamian art showing 4 goats chasing about in a circle gradually was transformed, in later work, into an abstract Maltese cross. On the other hand, early statues of gods merely suggested the figure, the face being left out as the artists feared to trespass farther, but then gradually moved toward realism. Kings and high priests were realistically portrayed, but ordinary people placed stylized figures of themselves in temples as stand-in worshippers.
You gotta love that, huh? You don't have to go to church in the morning. You just need to send someone to drop off your figurine.
Right. And it totally counts, right? Like, yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
You know what I was thinking? That probably made good for the people selling the figurines. A little capitalism, you know. Hey.
Yeah, shit.
Making money off of people's beliefs, right? Here's the deal: if you pay me this $10, I'll go drop off a figurine at church, and then you can be constantly praying.
Yeah, that's right. And if you're gonna believe in like deities, then why not believe in a figurine that represents you that's doing the praying?
Right?
Like, why not?
You're like, that's the coolest idea ever.
Yeah, like I can have my cake and eat it too.
Well, just think it, because people are probably thinking that, oh, that's so outdated to our stuff now. Yeah, well, don't people light candles? And they make prayers over the candles, and they believe that the whole time the candle is burning, it's
right. It's a signal
prayers,
to
correct?
it's a signal to your God or whatever.
Right?
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, that's true. My point is that people act like the stuff in the past is so like different.
Right.
No, that's your colonialism, pair of glasses you're seeing through.
Yeah. It's just not that different.
No.
Okay, 2 mines. The statues uncovered at Nippur portray a cross-section of Sumerian society. A priestess standing majestically with a ritual cup in one hand and a branch in the other hobnobs with an old woman with a matronly double chin. A bearded man and his wife sit holding hands in one of the very few Sumerian double statues ever found. A carefully carved woman is made of a translucent green stone not yet identified. Her face is of gold, a metal that was believed to possess purifying properties and was frequently used for the noblest parts of the sculptures, the face and the hands. As in so much of Sumerian art, the facial expressions of the statues tell a story of their own. Some of the worshippers are strained and goggle-eyed, others are composed and serene. The Sumerians were apparently of 2 minds about their gods. What would they send, affliction or comfort? That's kind of like all gods, right?
See? You know. They're not special. Isn't that literally what people do? Is God gonna bless me? Is it gonna cause someone to die?
That's right.
And is that death part of God's plan? Oh God.
Yeah. Sacred mountains are central to certain religions and are usually the subjects of many legends.
Especially shamanism, by the way, has a lot of connections with mountains.
They
either
like
going
mountains.
Inside of mountains or volcanoes, or just high mountains, or or even building mounds and thinking that their deities live on top of them, or that's where
isn't that a kind of a thing, like the idea that you climb a mountain and you can achieve spiritual awareness by climbing that mountain and being on top of the mountain.
Yes, I absolutely think that relates. Yeah, because it wasn't just gods; it was ancestors. Basically, it's the afterlife. Or as they say, non-human persons.
Yeah.
So non-human persons could related to the sky and the underworld, but which is why, in a sense, the top of a mountain could be considered the sky, relating to that realm. Where, say, a cave could be the underworld. And it's one mountain though. But anyways, so that's
Right.
I'm just saying mountains it's more complex than just it's a high peak, and that's where the most important is all I was trying to say.
Right. Yeah.
The whole thing from the bottom to the top could be important.
Right. Like the whole world is represented by a mountain sort of thing.
There you go. Yeah, right. You get it.
For many, the most symbolic aspect of a mountain is the peak because it is believed to be the closest to heaven or other religious realms. Many religions have traditions centered on sacred mountains, which either are or were considered holy, such as Mount Olympus or in Greek mythology, or are related to famous events like Mount Sinai in Judaism and Christianity, and the descendant religions or Mount Kailash in Hinduism. Kailash. In some cases, the sacred mountain is purely mythical, like the Hara Baranzati in Zoroastrianism. Mount Kailash is believed to be the abode of the deities Shiva and Parvati, and is considered sacred in 4 religions: Hinduism, Bon, Buddhism, and Jainism. Volcanoes, such as Mount Etna in Italy, were also considered sacred. Mount Etna being believed to have been the home of Vulcan, the Roman god of fire and the forge. Edwin Birnbaum, a preeminent scholar of sacred mountains around the world, identifies the following 10 themes expressed through sacred mountains that are particularly widespread in cultures around the world. Summarized below, a particular sacred mountain may have one or more of these themes represented in it. Some may have nearly all of them. Height. So when we look at a mountain, the first thing to impress us is usually not its central location, but its height, which evokes an immediate response of wonder and awe. Poised above the surrounding landscape, set in a fluid dream of drifting clouds and flowing sky, its summit appears to float in another world, higher and more perfect than the one in which we dwell. Center. The view of the mountain as the center appears in its most comprehensive form as a central axis linking together the 3 levels of the cosmos: heaven, earth, and hell, or underworld. As the link between heaven, earth, and hell, it acts as a conduit of power, the place where sacred energies, both divine and demonic, spew into the world of human existence. Power. Many sacred mountains are revered as places of awesome power manifested in various ways: natural, supernatural, and even political. Deity or abode of deity, as places of power and heavens on high. Mountains serve as abodes of gods and goddesses, often situated at the center of the cosmos, world, or region. Temple or place of worship. Mountains often appear in the form of temples housing the deities who reside on or within them. As centers and high places open to the sky, mountains provide altars for making offerings to gods and spirits. Also, mountains may take the form of places of worship, viewed or imagined as shrines, churches, and cathedrals. Paradise or garden. Modern societies share with traditional cultures the widespread view of mountains as sacred gardens and earthly paradises. Ancestors and the dead. Whether revered as heavens or feared as hells, mountains have a widespread and important role as hallowed places of the dead. In many places, the resemblance of the mountains to tombs, which often mimic the shape of hills, make them the natural places of burial. In seeing mountains as abodes of the dead, people often regard them as the places from which their ancestors came, or as those ancestors themselves. Identity. As divine ancestors, mountains provide many societies with their identity and cohesiveness. Source. People throughout the world look up to mountains as sources of innumerable blessings, sometimes attributed to the ancestral spirits dwelling within them. For many cultures, the most important of these blessings is water. Other blessings that flow from sacred mountains include fertility, health, and well-being, as well as treasures of various kinds. Revelation, transformation, inspiration, and renewal. As places of power close to heaven, mountains serve as dramatic sites of revelation, transformation, inspiration, and renewal. The revelation or vision on a mountain often transforms the person who receives it. Hermits of traditions around the world seek out mountains as places to transform themselves through practices of physical austerity and spiritual contemplation. Poets and mystics have visualized the ascent of the sacred mountain as a symbol of the ultimate pilgrimage, leading to the heights of heaven, and the final goal of spiritual realization. For lay people who do not aspire to the supreme heights of spiritual transcendence or enlightenment, mountains serve as places where they can find inspiration and renewal. Sumerian religion.
Because when we talk about, next week, Sammy Shamanism, there's a lot of connection to mountains. Whether he's going to bring it up or not, I'm going to have stuff ready.
Okay.
I'll probably read a little script on Sammy Shamanism, regardless of what he says. He may agree, with it, but
right.
Just because I think it's better to make sure that people hear what all the stuff I want them to hear.
Yep, for sure. Sumerian religion seems to have been founded upon two separate cosmogenic myths. The first saw creation as the result of a series of hieroi gamoi, or sacred marriages, involving the reconciliation of opposites, postulated as a coming together of male and female divine beings, the gods. This pattern continued to influence regional Mesopotamian myths. Thus, in the later Akkadian Enuma Elish, creation was seen as the union of fresh and salt water between male Abzu and female Tiamat. The products of that union, Lam and Lamu, the muddy ones, were titles given to the gatekeepers of the Abzu temple of Enki and Eridu, the first Sumerian city. Mirroring the way that muddy islands emerge from the confluence of fresh and salty water at the mouth of the Euphrates, where the river deposits its load of silt. A second Hieros Gamos supposedly resulted in the creation of Anshar and Kishar, the sky pivot or axle, and the earth pivot. Parents of
just so you understand that the Egyptian myth is that a pyramid mound of earth comes out of the water in a sense.
Okay.
So I'm just showing you that in a sense now you could realize that these have to do with older beliefs of mountains in general, especially since, like Saskatchewan, Egypt doesn't have mountains.
Right.
You're like, hey, wait a minute, Saskatchewan has hills.
Yeah, we have some hills. We even have some high hills. But yeah, not much. Nothing you'd call a mountain, that's for sure.
Right. My point is that these mountain beliefs definitely, I think, relate to other areas. To me, like I said, I think some of this stuff, or maybe all of this stuff, in a very loose way, is connected to the Golden Mountains of Siberia, because a lot of DNA passes back and forth from there and relates to all. And in fact, when we did the Chinese prehistory stuff, the guy's going to talk a lot about mountains and on shamanism, and that's also why I felt like you need to know all this stuff first. Right. So when we start talking, you'll be like, "Oh yeah.
Tie it all together.
Yeah.
Cool. So Anshar and Kishar, they are parents in turn of Anu, or the sky, and Ki, the earth. Another important Sumerian Hieros Gamos was that between Ki, known as Ninhursag, or Lady of the Mountains, and Enki of Eridu, the god of fresh water, which brought forth greenery and pasture.
At an early in the mountains, related to deity. I'm just trying to say. So that's why I said that. To me, I think my personal feeling that a lot of these shell mounds, earth mounds, whether in America or Europe or whatever, in the Middle East, that they actually, in Egypt, they actually relate to mountain beliefs.
Yeah.
And like I said, that for the Egyptians, they used to put a little pyramid on top of the pyramid's top that was considered the Mound of Creation.
Okay.
Odin stone, which is referencing the Mound of Creation. So it's referencing a little mountain out of the water or whatever. But I'm saying, so that's why, to me, I don't get into like a lot of these beliefs about the things connected because the people built the same. I think a lot of this stuff is connected because they have these spiritual beliefs about mountains. that spread all over the place, like they say. And then that inspires these building mounts. Now, like they say, because archaeologists always go, oh, well, building a pile of rocks ends up in a pyramid. I really could care less. That's nothing to me.
Right.
But that also denies the fact that they intentionally say it's a pyramid mound of creation. So, but even if they didn't, it doesn't even matter. My point is, they're referencing mountains. And just like in the Sumerians, they referenced the mound coming out of the water.
Yeah.
And they felt that their ziggurats were a pseudo mountain where the deity lives in. So in a sense, I understand this. Like I said, the connection when people say, "Oh, look, they look the same." Well, yeah, it's like saying all these Christians seem to all have a Jesus. What the hell?
Right. Yeah. Yes, they do. What is it? It's not a special thing that they do. They all, of course, they do. They have
my
to.
point is that someone that got it in Africa and got it in China did not meet the same people, right?
Right.
So get out of this bullshit that everything is connected in some sort of like circumnavigating the globe, Graham Hancock nonsense.
Yeah.
Never happened.
Yeah.
That's my point, is to grasp, yes, there is a connection. My connection, I would say, is through the mountain beliefs, and thus mythology is similar, and thus you have a desire to build a similar thing because you have a similar kind of mountain beliefs, and that limits what it ends up looking like.
Right.
And so the fact that they kind of match, well, yeah, it's not the same people or even the same belief exactly, but it's this.
But of course,
belief,
they kind of,
it's an older belief in these mountain structures.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's my thinking, in which I think is, like I said, there's evidence of why that's accurate.
Yeah. Makes sense to me, anyway. At an early stage, following the dawn of recorded history, Nippur in central Mesopotamia replaced Eridu in the south as the primary temple city, whose priests exercised political hegemony on the other city-states. And Nippur retained this status throughout the Sumerian period. Sumerians believed in an anthropomorphic polytheism, or the belief in many gods in human form. There was no common set of gods. Each city-state had its own patrons, temples, and priest kings. Nonetheless, these were not exclusive. The gods in one city were often acknowledged elsewhere. Sumerian speakers were among the earliest people to record their beliefs in writing and were a major inspiration in later Mesopotamian mythology, religion, and astrology. The Sumerians worshipped An as the full-time god equivalent to heaven. Indeed, the word An in Sumerian means sky, and his consort Ki means earth.
Right, and see, like that, and then the Sumerians, right, are doing this, but then you have, like I said before to you, the Sky Fathers and Earth Mothers. This is our sky. It's crossed the whole Earth in a sense.
Right.
So it's not special, but it is a related thing of all these, beliefs in the being similar. So they don't call them different names, but in a sense they have these similar, because the Mongolian belief of the god Tan or Tanger, I think his name is the great sky.
Okay.
So
yeah, I think we've talked about that a couple times before, where like the sky thing is very common.
Very common. Yeah.
And the Earth representation is also very common.
Very common, especially going together with the two of them. Yeah, real common.
So
but I was making a comment that, once again, I know people hear this and like, ha ha ha, we're old deity no one cares about. Well, actually, most of the deities were that, including the Bible. So
that's right.
And they go, no, it wasn't. I'm like, oh, really? So he wasn't related to the sky? Heaven's not in heaven?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And Satan didn't fall from heaven? So he also was in heaven?
Yeah, that's right.
Like as in the sky?
Yeah.
Anyways, but
for sure.
And then, of course, they need to know that some of the early representation of Jesus was with a horse head, not a Jesus figure.
Right.
Because the horse head represented the sun god, shaman, which also related to the sky. So they depict him as the sun god. Now, that's not saying that they were saying that he had to be a god of the sun, which is
right.
I think it's more like sky deity reference. Just so people can grasp what I'm saying. I know it can be confusing, but like the star of Ishtar changes, it becomes what's called a ding, which is a symbol of God or sky or heaven.
Okay.
So, but originally it was something else. My point is, things can change and still stay similar. That's what I think the mountain believes, and like pyramids and all this. It's not pyramids are so important to me. They're really not. You need to grasp what's motivating this, not the individual person's glory, because that's also a factor. That's why I try to say to this one archaeologist that they want it to be one issue and that like it's for a leader's power. Okay, I agree with that. It's to seem impressive for a culture. I agree with that.
Right.
It is sometimes, for religious services or checking the times of the year or fighting or whatever. And it's still about mountains. And it could be all of the above. It's not. Yeah. But that goes back to sometimes people get fallacy thinking of black and white.
Yeah.
Which is
the false dichotomies.
It's simple.
Yeah.
But reality is not that simple.
No.
And like I said, too, to me, I really want anarchism. I really want to end hierarchy. So I really want people to become more culturalized so that we could have it without fucking wars and hate and violence and bigotry and shit that happens because we think we're fucking special and we're better and other people are other.
Right.
Whatever, So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So Enki in the south at the temple in Eridu, Enki was the god of beneficence and of wisdom, ruler of the freshwater depths beneath the earth, a healer and a friend to humanity, who in Sumerian myth was thought to have given humans the arts and sciences, the industries and the manners of civilization. The first law book was considered his creation. Enlil was the god of the storm, wind, and rain. He was the chief god of the Sumerian pantheon and the patron god of Nippur. His consort was Ninlil, the goddess of the south wind. Inanna,
and he would be like Thor in a sense,
right.
goddess of lightning or storms or whatever.
Inanna was the goddess of love, sexuality, and war. The deification of Venus, the morning eastern and the evening western star, at the temple shared with An at Uruk. Deified kings may have reenacted the marriage of Inanna and Dumuzid with priestesses. The sun god Utu at Larsa in the south and Sipar in the north. The moon god Sin at Ur. These deities formed the main pantheon, and in addition to this, there were hundreds of other minor gods. Sumerian gods were often associated with different cities, and their religious importance was often waxed and waned with those cities' political power. The gods were said to have created human beings from clay for the purpose of serving them. The temples organized the mass labor projects needed for irrigation and agriculture. Citizens had a labor duty to the temple, though they could avoid it by a payment of silver.
So pause for a second. So we can see right there that there's some religious horseshit that, you have to, in a sense, owe the god because of, and give sacrifice and things. And it teaches, innocent to me, like that's when people say like religion teaches, control, and which is why I can agree with is that it teaches you that you need to feel obligated to sacrifice for the God's betterment, not for your betterment. It's not like you have this wonderful God that wants Cory to be the most free person and cares about you and all your resources and doesn't ask anything from you.
No. No, it's got to be obeyed. It's got to be you got to tithe or do work or do penance or what have you.
Like it says there, you either have to work physically or you have to give money.
Yeah.
So
which again, like you say, like the inequality is pretty clear there. The rich don't have to do the labor.
Yeah.
If you can afford to pay the silver, then you don't have to do the work.
So you already get it. You already get the little thing going on there, huh?
Yeah, that's right. Pretty clear class distinction there in my mind.
Yeah. Once again, not primitive communism.
Right, yeah.
But like
Yeah.
I said too, but that doesn't mean there never was it or it still isn't. That's
Right. Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
I'm gonna go for a second. I'll be right back.
Okay.
All right, I'm back.
All right.
All right. We'll pick up where we left off. Sumerians believed that the universe consisted of a flat disk enclosed by a dome. The Sumerian afterlife involved a descent into a gloomy netherworld to spend eternity into a wretched existence as a Giddim, or ghost. The universe to the Sumerians was divided into 4 quarters. To the north were the hill-dwelling Subartu, who were periodically raided for slaves, timber, and other raw materials. To the west were the tent-dwelling Martu, ancient Semitic-speaking peoples living as pastoral nomads, tending herds of sheep and goats. To the south was the land of Dilmun, a trading state associated with the land of the dead and the place of the creation. And to the east were the Elamites, a rival people with whom the Sumerians were frequently at war. Their known world extended from the upper sea or Mediterranean coastline to the lower sea, the Persian Gulf, and the land of Meluha, probably the Indus Valley, and Magan, Oman, famed for its copper ores. Sumerian temples and temple organization. Ziggurats, or Sumerian temples, each had an individual name and consisted of a forecourt with a central pond for purification. The temple itself had a central nave with aisles along either side. Flanking the aisles would be rooms for the priests. At one end would stand the podium and a mud brick temple for the animal and vegetable sacrifices. Granaries and storehouses were usually located near the temples. After a time, the Sumerians began to place the temples on top of multi-layered square constructions built as a series of rising terraces, giving rise to the ziggurat style.
Or kind of like pyramids.
Right. Sumerian funerary practices. It was believed that when people died, they would be confined to a gloomy world of Eresh Kigal, whose realm who was guarded by gateways with various monsters designed to prevent people from entering or leaving. The dead were buried outside the city walls in graveyards where a mound covered the corpse, along with offerings to monsters and a small amount of food.
Right. So my goes back to my thing. So you see that there's mound burials also.
Yeah.
Right. So when I say that there's a common connection, I think, with the mounds and whatever, it's not crazy because they are building mounds. In fact,
right.
They also made mounds first, called platform mounds, just like America did. And then they put temples on top of those, like a ziggurat on top of a dirt mound.
Ah.
So
mounds upon mounds.
But what I'm saying is they go back to me to creation stories and myths about mounds of creation and on mountain beliefs. So I'm just saying those to me, those two things, once you understand both those, that these creation beliefs relate to this, and then you understand like how sacred mountains are, like you read, I feel it really helps then looking at all these differently. Don't it doesn't even matter if they're not built exactly the same. The concept more important. That's why when they say, "Oh, this, the Incas matched the Egyptians," I could care less.
Right, like
don't.
Yeah, construction style is less important than the reason that they killed.
Right, like you're missing the point a little bit to me.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree in that sense that some of the things, because you're both trying to make mountains and temples at the same time.
Yeah.
And that you end up with kind of a similar, thing. Anyways.
Yeah, it's like even if you think about like comparing it to the mentality of people now, right? Like, why do people build certain buildings the way they build them?
Right.
Like, why are churches shaped the way they're built? Or, why do office towers have to be so high? Like, there's a functional use, but also there's a power balance there. There's an impression that people who live on the top floor have more power than those who live below them. And
like the great unwashed, right?
Right. Like there's reasons for that people build things the way they do. It doesn't just come purely from functional stuff.
Right. And all I was trying to say is I think that these understanding of these two things, these creation stories that relate to mounds coming out of water,
right?
And the thing of understanding sacred mountains with ancestors and the sky, and how below the mountain is the underworld. So if you put a mountain on top of someone, you just put them in the underworld.
Yeah. Because if you add up all the various, because their belief systems were a core part of their culture, right?
It's as if it's not now.
Well, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
People are like, I'm a Christian, that doesn't mean they just have a God belief and we just go, okay, and bye-bye.
Yeah,
no, now if they say that, I generally say, are you on the right? You're a conservative. You don't believe that women should have abortion. It's a whole, you think this, that, you have all these, I don't think that you can get outside, because once again, to me, religion is not special. It's culture, just like language.
That's right.
So it's being shared, like language is spread, and so does culture ideas about things.
Yeah,
even clothing or whatever, or even like I said, belief in mountains.
Yep.
It's not that every single religion is the same, or that one person went, like Graham Hancock, one culture went and spread mountain beliefs everywhere. Even though I do think there's some DNA connection, I would never say that because that sounds bizarre as fuck to me.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
This one group just went around and did it all. That's the thing.
No, it's like, I think it's probably more like this.
Mm.
You may or may not have already been impressed by mountains, but then I tell you, well, that is this thing, and then you're like, well, of course, I already thought that, or it's not. It's in other words, it's emotionally intuitive to when you go on top of a mountain. I've been on high mountains.
Right.
When you look down, it feels otherworldly.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it fucking does. I mean, so I get it. It feels like, wow. I mean, it's just awe-inspiring. So my point is, I'm saying, if I then said you didn't have a belief, or I said, yeah, well, I think God's up there, you'd be like, that's a good point. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not saying it even had to be that they were like forcing mountain beliefs, but it's somewhat intuitive. You look at a mountain, and they say, well, this is this. And you're like, okay, I can buy that.
That's
and
right.
It's not like, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, if you don't have like a set worldview beforehand, or like if it is sort of similar in some ways, then you can easily adopt that kind of mentality.
Right. So exactly. So I'm not saying that there was proselytizers going around trying to spread mountain beliefs. You get my point?
Yep.
No Graham Hancock thing happened.
Yeah. It's just the product of normal human interaction and like cultural
and also,
transfer.
It's not impossible too that multiple ones could have been impressed with mountains, because everyone, no matter if they're told anything, goes on a mountain and feels awe in a sense. So
yeah,
I'm not 100% saying that there has to be every single, in a sense, that makes a mound is connected. There could be not ones that are not connected, but still relating to mountains, because you get my point.
Yep.
So I feel like that's a better reason of why so many around the world look the same. It's not exactly because we want big high things. It's we want big high things because big high things get us to heaven.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, like like if you even if you think like ostensibly like secular things, like the skyscrapers that are a monument to capital, like that's still rooted in that belief that like the heaven is at the top floor.
Right. Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like, so it's still
right.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that I do think there is some like DNA connection, especially, through Siberia and stuff. But I'm also saying that I don't think it had to be just that, because all on your own, people could come up with the mountain belief. I'm just saying, I think most of the things that are mounds and stuff and pyramids have I feel, reference back to mountain thinking, belief, sacredness.
On some level. I mean,
some level. I'm not saying every single is the same. I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah. Right.
And like I already told you, of course, to me, I think that indigenous people made all the ones in their areas. So I don't. I'm not. Yeah. I just want to clarify, because I don't get when I say things, we
don't want people to be like, misinterpret what's being said. All right. Those who could afford it sought burial at Dilmun. Human sacrifice was found in the death pits at the Royal Cemetery, where Queen Puabi was accompanied in death by her servants. Sumer's legacy. Evidence of wheeled vehicles appeared in the mid-4th millennium BCE, near simultaneously in Mesopotamia, the North Caucasus, or the Maykop culture, and Central Europe. The wheel initially took the form of the potter's wheel. The new concept led to wheeled vehicles and mill wheels. The Sumerian cuneiform script is the oldest,
I would
or
say
second
maybe,
oldest.
or I almost don't agree with that.
Okay.
That the potter's wheel gave rise to the wheel. There's wheels. The oldest wheels are in Poland or something. I mean, and the drawing of it is in the culture over there, the North Europe. So, and
I'm not sure
as far as wheeled vehicles, if you mean chariots per se, then you're talking Russia,
right?
I think it's the Shintasta culture, but maybe I'm wrong about that. But anyways, my point is, it's not Middle East. So that's all I'm saying. It came from Russia down. The ones from Russia went down to Egypt, and then after they were, in a sense, had to fight wars and lose, they invented their own chariot, which was like a Maserati or a Porsche or something compared to like a regular car, and thus that's why they started really doing well.
Okay. So even though this says that the wheel we can take part of the legacy of Sumer, we're saying that that's unlikely.
I'm saying it's unlikely.
Okay.
In fact, they also say some other nonsense that they invented sleds. And I'm like, that's interesting. I'll have to tell the Eskimos that did it friggin' 10,000 years ago that the people 6,000 years ago or 5,000 years ago invented sleds in the Middle East. Because we all know sleds in the Middle East is like, oh, hell yes. Yeah. Not in the snow and ice. No, please don't even bring that up. How possibly Could anyone invent anything like a sled in the snow and ice, and yet not the Middle East?
Yeah.
I don't fucking know.
Seems like somebody might like who's writing things might be making drawing conclusions that are unjustified.
That would be Damien's opinion, that whoever wrote that, and they say it could have been, since maybe reinvented there, right? I don't know that. All I know is they weren't the first. So do not say, my point is, I don't think they invented the wheel first. I think it happened on step. And certainly the chariot happened in a step, which once again makes sense. It just like saying a sled invented by the freaking northern Siberians and Eskimo type people is a lot more logical. And they also were traveling like 1,500 miles and trading stone tools.
Right.
Obviously, they're getting around somewhere, and so finding sleds pulled by dogs or pulled by caribou is not a crazy thing. And like I said, certainly more. And like I said, even if let's just say that I'm wrong, that they transferred that to the Cossack Mountains, which I think they did, and then from there to the Middle East, which I think they did, but or from Iran over. But I think, which they got it from the Siberia, I think that it still would be accurate to say that the people in the north, the Eskimo type people, they invented it first. Right. Even if these people used one, okay. Even if they invented one at 5,000, okay. But they're not the first. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
Certainly. But like I already told you, remember, the Dane Caucasian is the Cossack Mountains and all the way over from Siberia and then central Siberia all the way over to, North America.
Right.
And Canada. So the fact that the DNA, I already told you, matches, the language might match, and then on top of it, the other facts that's going on, what I mean by is technology, like the dog spread. We know 7,000 years ago shoots in. We know that, like I said, 10,000 years ago or 9,000 something, there's evidence of sleds and traveling 1,500 miles, long distances.
Right.
I don't know how many kilometers that is, but it's a lot. 1,500 miles is a lot of miles. I don't know how many kilometers, but anyways, that's
it's like pretty far.
Or something.
2.2. No, it's 1.24 something kilometers.
So
per
even
mile.
farther than 1,500.
Yeah.
So that would be like what, 18, almost 2,000 or something kilometers or something. Yeah, long travel, and that was a consistent travel, not like one time they went and never went back. So it was they call it trade network. So I mean, anyways, my point is they're showing there's clear evidence of massive movements over long distances. That's what I'm saying. And then they have a sled, and then later, after they've come here, then sleds get invented here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That doesn't sound how I would accurately label it for myself, but
seems backwards. But yeah.
Anyways, I'm sorry. Just when they say that, I just go.
Yeah. No worries. So the Sumerians' cuneiform script is the oldest or second oldest after the Egyptian hieroglyphics, which has been deciphered. The status of even older inscriptions, such as Jiahu symbols and Tartaria's tablets, is controversial.
Well, and that is China at 9,000.
Right.
And the other ones are, I'm thinking Central Asia, and I think that's what those are. Other ones are.
Okay.
And they're younger. I think like 3,000 or 4,000 or something. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Or maybe I'm wrong in the second one, but I know the first one is China, because that culture also did the first silk that had the supposed language that they said is not a language. I don't know how controversial it is. I would say that it looks like the proto language of nothing. I mean, it's got multiple symbols and stuff. I don't know that all of it is, but here's another crazy thought. 9,000 years ago in that same area with millet farming spread all of the languages from Turkey all the way to Siberia and all the way to China, all the way down into I don't know, all those Melanesia or whatever, whatever's below China.
Okay.
Yeah, anyways, Polynesian stuff. So in a sense, it's all connected or related. I shouldn't say connected because that sounds too
right. Related is more
related is probably better. Have relations, or years later have relations, or whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
But anyways, but there's a, so to me, you can see that these ideas. So if languages are almost if you take from Russia, right, like I said, basically the Cossack Mountains, and you go all the way to the Asia, that whole entire area of Asia is almost related.
Okay.
To a lot of cultures, two major language families connected to 9,000 years ago in one place in China. So the fact of saying that those are not language, when we know language goes back to exactly 9,000, just like them,
right?
And millet farming, yeah, like those people, yeah, and they also were so not advanced that they had silk, and they also had single barrels. They also had the beginnings of probably hierarchy a little bit, not major, but some stuff. And they were drinking wine. I mean, these with honey, which, but anyways, my point is they were not, and they had pottery, and they were advanced in a sense. With certainly not where I would be like, oh yeah, there's no way that those symbols they made, and there's a lot of them, and they keep making them. There's no way that's a language or relates at all to something to do with language.
Yeah.
So
seems clearly to be a written language of some kind.
Proto-language is probably a better way of saying it.
Okay.
What I mean is yes, I think some of that stuff relates maybe to words, and maybe some of it doesn't. I don't know. It's not translated, but I'm just saying it's certainly, and especially when you, that's where the two major languages of, families of the world, it's a lot of people. It's the trans-Caucasian or trans-Eurasian languages, which used to be called the Attil languages, but that has to do with the Attai Mountains, which they're actually not from or limited to, so it's not accurate to call them that.
Okay.
They just thought that because there was such a big deal related to that. Yes, because they think that mountain is special.
Mm-hmm.
Mountain beliefs.
Yeah. All right. The Sumerians were among the first astronomers, mapping the stars into sets of constellations, many of which survived in the zodiac and were also recognized by the ancient Greeks. They were also aware of the 5 planets that are easily visible to the naked eye. They invented and developed arithmetic by using several different number systems, including a mixed radix system with an alternating base 10 and base 6. This sexagism can't say this word, system became the standard number system in Sumer and Babylonia. They may have invented military formations and introduced the basic divisions between infantry, cavalry, and archers. They developed the first known codified legal and administrative systems, complete with courts, jails, and government records.
I don't know about the archery too, because a lot of the steppe and the Mongolians and all that, they have a lot of archery stuff, and so of compound bows in Asia. I don't know. It could be. I don't know. Like just throwing it out there that I can't agree that these people are isolated and all their ideas are totally of their own making, out of their own.
Yeah. The first true city-states arose in Sumer, roughly contemporaneously with similar entities in what are now Syria and Lebanon. Several centuries after the invention of cuneiform, the use of writing expanded beyond debt/payment certificates and inventory lists to be applied for the first time about 2600 BCE to messages and mail delivery, history, legend, mathematics, astronomical records, and other pursuits. Conjointly with the spread of writing, the first formal schools were established, usually under the auspices of a city-state's primary temple. Though invaded by the Elamites, Akkadians, and Gutians in the 3rd millennium BCE, and conquered definitively by the Amorites around 1900 BCE, the wealth of Sumer's cultural legacy was arguably unparalleled, and their invented system of writing occupying a chief place. The Epic of Gilgamesh, estimated to have been written around 2100 BCE under Sumerian rule in cuneiform, was the world's first epic poem, dramatizing the exploits of the Sumerian king Gilgamesh, who came to power in Uruk around 2700 BCE. Cuneiform had massive staying power for 2,000 years after Sumer's conquest by the Amorites. Successor civilizations in the Near East used it to record their languages. The ziggurat was a hallmark of Sumerian architecture, and the influence of its design carried into subsequent Babylonian structures. To the list of Sumerian innovations already mentioned, we can add the pottery wheel, which you already mentioned is not necessarily correct.
I wasn't saying the pottery wheel. I don't know about that.
Right,
I'm saying the wheel.
The
They
wheel.
try to say that the wheel came from the invention of the pottery wheel. But they
which is
also
not clear.
there's also one archaeologists or anthropologists that have made comments that they think that what happened first before the wheel is that people in Samaria invented the sled to push across sand. Supposedly. And well, I mean that they invented it. That's my supposedly. Like, yeah. Mm-hmm. So
Okay.
It was invented a long time before that.
Yeah.
But okay, so even if they reinvented it, which I still think they got it probably from the north. I mean, but even if they did for pushing on sand, I still say they didn't invent the wheel either. Even if they did it later, it didn't mean they did it first. I still think it happened. The oldest wheels are all in Europe and in the steppe. So I mean, it doesn't. The wheel vehicles, and in fact, like there's a toy in Turkey that has a 4-wheel chariot, which later you see it in Sumerian art when they won wars. But it's in Turkey, so it's from they certainly already, but it's 5,500, I think, and it's older than any chariot pictures or anything in Iraq, or Mesopotamia, Sumeria's. So
Okay.
I don't even think. My point is, I don't even think they invented the 4-wheel chariot, even though they used it a shit ton to fucking dominate people. I don't think they invented that either. Sorry.
Yeah. So we can also add systematized irrigation that included dams and canals.
And also, just I don't know, but dams and canals also is something that happened in China.
Mm-hmm. So. We've got the 2-wheeled chariot, industrial scale textile mills, molds for mass producing bricks, bellows-based furnaces for working metal, and a basic system of mathematics. The Sumerians laid the blueprint for creating, sustaining, and expanding a culture, a blueprint that paved the way for a plethora of cultures that soon came after.
Which I do think is true. It is absolutely true that they had massive impact, especially ones that wanted to be non-anarchist and imperialistic, terrors. They absolutely set the model. Like I said, they showed, hey, what you need to do to really be powerful is have standing freaking armies.
Right. Yeah.
With all kinds of specialized war abilities.
Yeah.
Like sports. How to fucking fight.
Right.
Yeah. And then under the guise of fun. So that you can also then get people to, when they kill and murder and torture, think that, hey, this is cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's the end of our script for today.
Not only that, it's the end of this series. Finally,
I've been wanting
to have all 12. I put it in all my blogs, and the bottom I put these 12 shows, even though we had not yet made them all.
When did we start this series?
We started it. I think when I came to Florida, I think maybe not. I don't know.
We've been going for a little while now.
Oh, it's a while. Well, also because I threw a couple things, videos in between.
That's true. Yeah.
But that's also because, especially Graham Hancock, people saying dumb shit because of him. It's more, in other words, it's not his video. In other words, Graham Hancock could have said nonsense and Damien would never give a shit. There's a bunch of people talk all kind of nonsense.
Yeah.
The
But when
issue
people start believing it, yeah.
When atheists and like other leftists come up to me or anarchists and tell me that I need to check out this guy because he proves that science it shouldn't be trusted and all this, and I go, oh fuck, we gotta try. So that's that. It's my goal was not ever to, like I said, address him at all, really, but
So it looks like your first Show 1 blog was published on May 25th of last year.
Right on.
So we've been doing this for 11 months.
Oh, wow. And we're done, which I am happy. Yeah. And like I said, I do like talking about shamanism a lot more than this.
Yeah. So, well, it's tough to stay on one topic for that length of time, right? Like, because you're going to have different things coming at you, and you're going to get interested in something and start reading a whole bunch about it, and then we're still covering this.
Yes, I'm like, oh, this hideous shit. Well, like I said too, the reason I did this was because I feel like anarchists don't have the resources to understand like the beginning of society in a sense, or as I meant that as a colloquial term,
right?
Not as a reality. I meant like
right.
Because what I'm saying, we under a paradigm that things happened a certain way, and so I don't totally disagree with like a socialist paradigm that I've seen of how society kind of evolves. That's not 100% inaccurate in a big picture way,
right?
But in a detailed way, it is inaccurate. But then again, so is my stuff. So in a detailed way, I can explain a lot more stuff. But when I say that's like what I just say 50,000 years ago for totemism, but it could be 45. But I just say 50,000. Because it also could be maybe we picked it up from Neanderthals, which had it like about 50,000. So
right,
and the Desovians started doing stuff about 50,000. So it's I just say 50,000. It's a rough draft, I don't. It is the same with shamanism. I say 30,000. Well, it could be 35, maybe probably more accurate, or maybe somewhere 32. Anyways, my point is, I'm saying is that. I just say the basics because that's still better than say 6,000, right? So it's not like I'm trying to make it really inaccurate. I'm trying to make it pretty much accurate, but like easier for people to remember.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I really appreciate with this because I know this to me is like really heavy stuff. A lot of this shit is.
Yeah. It can be a lot. Like that's the thing. It's actually, I mean, it's probably good actually in a way that we covered this over the course of almost a year, right?
Yes.
Because it gives a person a chance to actually like absorb it a little bit and kind of like understand where like the history of it, and like a lot of stuff. Some of the stuff gets repeated in different episodes and different blog posts, so you hear it multiple times, so it actually is something you learn rather than something that just
I do that
goes in one ear and out the other.
Well, actually, I do that on purpose. Why I said I wanted to watch it every single time. Where are we at?
Yeah.
So every time you think, boom, Mesopotamia. It means the land between two rivers, and it comes from the Greeks. And
right. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's good. I'm glad we're done this series, and we can move on to something else. But
yeah, so like I said, then we're talking about shamanism, but the reason really is because I want to talk about China,
right?
Prehistoric China, and prehistoric China cannot be fully understood until you understand shamanism, because they start talking about shamanism ideas coming from the north, Siberia, into China, and how they could tell it relating to later cultures of the Bronze Age that become paganism.
Right.
And all these big bells and everything really related at first to little tiny bells on the shaman's clothes.
Right.
So little tiny bells became these gigantic, like monstrous bells. Anyways, but you'll see in the videos.
Interesting.
We're about China. We're having five. We're gonna do 5 videos on China.
Okay.
So, but anyways, my point is that because we've done this stuff, if people also, not just you, but people that are watching, if you watch the stuff that we talked, or the videos on shamanism, and then you watch the one on China, it'll be a lot easier to understand.
Yeah.
But like I said, the only reason really it isn't is because of colonialism. We should know a lot of this. This is like, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
World history. We should know some of this shit. It's like,
Yeah.
The fact that we're so unaware is pretty telling. Like you
Yeah.
said, it's intentional.
Right. Yeah. It's meant, because every state wants to be the supreme state for the citizens within it, right? So it has to propagandize, and it has to portray history in a certain way and ignore certain things.
It worships only their leaders. Yeah, you know.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm not for states. Yeah.
No,
I told you my preference is direct democracy. And like I said, it would be nice if we could vote in anarchism and socialism. I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think that's really how we get it. But
yeah, but I do know that it is important. Like what I'm trying to do with you is not you personally. I mean, together we're doing is what I meant.
Mm-hmm.
That trying to get people to become more aware culturally, because then I feel that is actually a good foundation for anarchism. It's the lack of knowing. It's living in these bubbles of colonialism, that is the problem. We can't, in other words, what I mean is, let's just say every state was taken away tomorrow. With the bigotry and the hatred we have, it would be fucking hell on earth.
Yeah.
Well, it already is, but I mean, it would be. My point is, it would be a continuation of the hell on earth we're experiencing now, instead of some new wonderful utopia that I hope that we can make. And I know that we cannot make it if we stay bigoted. We just fucking can't.
Well, and I mean, part of the problem is too that like you have to have a tool to eliminate the existence of private property, as well as the state. Until we have something where we can expropriate that private property from the bourgeoisie, the owning class, then we're stuck. Then it'd be the right-wing libertarian hellscape, which is basically feudalism, where we're ruled by corporations and the rich. Just because
I don't want.
Yeah, which is the opposite of what I want.
But see, you get what I'm saying, though. I feel like that, and there's someone who said before, I can't remember, an anarchist female that said, I can't remember who, but had said that that anarchists understand that there has to be a long transition of education.
Yeah,
and I think that that's what I am trying to do, and I also try to do it. As you know, I do outreach. I do outreach to the people on the right, people on the left. I try to do outreach because I want everyone to think more. Because I think if you think more, to me, the ethical conclusion is anarchism.
Yeah.
So, we're certainly moving them more left. And so, but I know that people that, like, say if we only sat here constantly talked about communism or anarchism as the only thing, which would be fun to me.
But you end up only appealing to a certain group, right?
That's right. And then I'm not doing outreach. I'm basically just doing confirmation.
Yeah.
Not outreach in a sense.
Which has a place, but that's not what this project is.
Well, again, I'm not putting that down. I'm just saying my thing is I wanted to try to reach out to the people we're not reaching out to. And not in a way that where they feel like they're being pushed politically. I want you to be pushed ethically.
Yeah.
I want you to be pushed culturally. I want you to be pushed critical thinking wise. I feel that a reasoned mind values humanity. A reasoned mind it sees the reason why taking care of everyone matters. I mean, it's so I feel like that if we stop thinking so individualistically, which I am against, and think more collectively, I think that the outcome of that is to realize, wow, we all matter. We need to take care of everybody. We can't have one Elon Musk going to the freaking moon. Other people can't even get breakfast. I mean, this,
that's right.
As I said before, to me, that's not civilized at all.
No, that's right.
So, anyways, what I'm saying is, so that's I was going to back to my point is that my goal is a unique way of, I feel, pushing anarchism and socialism, and that I do it in a way that I want to convince you because you learn.
Yeah.
You feel, not because I'm demanding that you think only my way. I just feel that if you learn stuff, you do start to think. I mean,
like if you, like you say, like if you start seeing like the way that like you start to understand other cultures, and you start to understand the differences and some of the history and prehistory of these various places, then it pretty much becomes apparent that there isn't one that's superior to the others. And
Really?
so like this nationalism, this patriotism,
yes,
and is nonsense. And then on top of that, you start to see like, well, there's always been an elites that have ruled over like the lower classes, and it's always been created more suffering, right?
yes.
So then to say that we're doing it the right way, we're having our elites rule in a more beneficial way, it's kind of nonsense, even though we've got no new technologies, and like that doesn't necessarily, like, that's not progress.
Well,
right?
think in my type of thinking is that's now. They can't possibly think, even if they think like, say, like a liberal government thinks that their idea is wonderful. You wouldn't say it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. What point would you say that's bullshit? It wasn't good, because there definitely is a point where slavery was legal and everything else, and women didn't have rights. And so at some point you have to admit that, it was fucking absolute bullshit. Even if you think this is less bullshit, this is a new thing. And here's another thing you learn from Trump and these other right-wing assholes. It's not even a guarantee it's going to stay what you think is even okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not okay. I live in a fucking state that wants to ban trans people's rights.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Did you read that shit? They want to take the trans kids away from parents?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Florida's not even the first state that's trying to do that, right? Like that's an increasing thing that.
But my point is, it's going backwards. So that's what I'm saying is they think that these, like you said, one special power person, it's a good one, is going to outweigh the bad ones. That's
right.
Horseshit.
Yeah.
And first off, I'm not okay with anybody being like, say, like all those people in Congress, all millionaires. That should be a problem. Seriously.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Especially when there's people, even in their own state, that they're a congressman for, they can't eat. Or they don't have enough stuff to go to school, or whatever, or have to live in their car. I mean, it's fucked up, man.
I'm officially of the opinion, like, that if you are going to have this so-called representative democracy, that the people who are doing the representing have to actually represent the people that are in the state. Like they can't be millionaires. They can't be, because most people are not.
Generally, somebody is a millionaire either by the greatest of luck or by some underhanded bullshit.
Yeah, exploitation,
right?
Yeah,
and I think that a lot of exploitation we take for granted. We think, we don't. That's like when I told John that I felt him producing books that he works fucking hard on and all of his knowledge,
that he does get paid for.
And he's like, and I said, that's capitalism. He's like, what? Are you kidding me?
That's just how it works. Oh yeah, maybe that is just how it works, but that seems fucked up, man. Right?
Yeah, that's how it works in fucked up capitalism.
I understand that you feel like you're writing for the greater good, and that's wonderful. Yes. But we live in a society that does not allow you to live off of that, which sucks.
Because you should be able to.
Yeah.
Just like you should be able to live off of doing the leftist stuff. So should I. I shouldn't have to, but I'm going to start doing jewelry because I can't live off of giving everything away for free.
We're talking about like now when we move into this new place, like because my rent our family rent goes up like $700 a month.
Wow.
So we're talking about like Pam's going to have to take more hours at her job. My hours at my job are pretty set. So I'm going to have to find a part-time job, which is going to take away from my content creation, but it's just, I already work 84 hours every 2 weeks, but I'm going to have to get a part-time job.
I appreciate that you're, and that's once again, that is not okay. That's fucked up.
It's fucked up. Yeah.
Fucked up, especially when hunter-gatherers are working like, 15 hours a week or something, or 20 hours, whatever it is.
Right.
Here you're working 80 and you think that they're the ones that have it hard and they're laughing at you. Like we talking about Hazai are out there smoking pot all the time and barely working.
Yeah. That's how it should be.
Yeah. That's how it should be. And men and women treated equally. That's absolutely how it should be. And then also, treating children with respect and as individual beings with dignity. Oh, crazy. I know. It's primitive.
Yep. Go figure, hey?
Yeah. But anyways, I appreciate everyone listening, and I appreciate, Cory coming, and I especially appreciate you being, politically close to like what I'm at, because I enjoy talking to you.
Yeah, for sure. No, I enjoy this every 2 weeks. I'm glad we do it.
Right on. Hope everyone's getting something good out of this, and we'll go on to things that I like more. Maybe you don't, but I like more at least.
Yeah.
All right. Well, and like I said, it's because I like learning the cultures. I like understanding, especially when, like you said, I also, you're not the only one. I had cartoon versions of what a shaman was, or whatever. Don't think that somehow I started like at some advanced level. I've gotten there because of education.
That's where we start, because of the fucking we don't get told anything.
No, or we get told wrong shit. We get bigots tell us, hey, by the way, these primitive people, like, oh fuck, you just used the word primitive. Well, it's just like it's important. Like I said, education is how I became who I am. The more I learned, the more I became left. That's why I was laughing and say, more when you grow older, you become more rightist. I don't think that's going to happen to me ever.
You know what? I mean, there's a number of reasons why that happens, but I think one of because they say like, oh, let's be when you start to own a house or you become a property owner or what have you, become more successful in your business career or whatever. But I think another part of it is that a lot of the people that are right wingers that I know, it's because they don't actually like spend much time learning new things.
Yeah.
They intentionally, like, they'll watch the shows that confirm what they believe already, or they'll just consume like pop culture, which doesn't seem to have a message.
Right.
So,
or has a metric to buy stuff, get happy because of your job, work hard, make money for the capitalists.
Yeah, because it promotes the status quo. It promotes the mainstream culture,
I do think they absolutely are teaching something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the no message is actually like the status quo is fine.
Yeah, that is the message.
Yeah,
you feel guilty, you feel bad, you feel you're being go get married. That'll make it better. Oh, that didn't make it better. Go have kids. Oh, that didn't make it better. Get into community.
Yeah, I used to really notice it. Like when I was deep in skepticism and atheism, I would notice the every time you watch a show, they bring up religion. They're talking about this and that and the other thing, and everything has a religious basis, or like everybody on TV has some kind of spiritual belief. It's very rare that somebody's actually an atheist, but it's the same thing with like cop shows. It's the same thing with capitalism. It's the same thing with like white supremacy and patriarchy and even cis heteronormativity. Like it's all like in the everything you watch. Everything.
Like I told you, I tell people I'm intersex, and they never ask me. They rarely ever offer support.
Right.
They just silence.
Yeah.
Oh. Or nothing, or just listen and move on. Like they
don't even ask questions. Like, what does that mean, or how? Yeah,
nothing.
It reminds me of I guess we're kind of riffing
You always
after
do,
we.
so it's like, no, dude.
But
Like I told everybody watching any of these 12 videos, I said from the beginning, right? This was to me about actually teaching anarchists and socialists. I said this.
Right.
If capitalists learn from this, fine. But my goal was not to cater to them.
Yeah. I mean, I was like with the intersex thing. Like I remember a couple of years ago when I was doing Uber, there was a passenger, and somehow we got onto the conversation about trans people, and I said, "Well, I mean, like, I think they were talking about not being able to change sex, and I was like, well, but like intersex people exist." And he said, well, yeah, but they're super, super rare. I said, intersex people are as common as redheads.
That's true.
So once you start to accept that,
and the reason why that's also true and people don't grasp is because everybody's not a hermaphrodite,
right?
In a sense, or whatever that concept of being both man and female. Just
right.
like every intersex person doesn't reject the gender that was assigned at birth.
Yeah.
Some accept it, some don't. Some are trans, some are not. Some are like me and feel like they're male and female. Yeah. That's a smaller portion, but it's still a portion, not just Damien. Other ones have said this.
Yeah.
So my point is that, yeah. And I would even question the ones that say that they fit the one at birth. I would say that, are you sure it's not because your culture makes it easier to say that?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, there's not any pressure to say that you're just a man or a woman, right? Because society is totally welcoming.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So when I hear that, I go, yeah, I wonder if a real society would more be trans and more be genderqueer and more say I'm at least not, binary. I feel, like I said, I don't have the study to prove that, but because then again, we're under society's bullshit. So yeah, it's like when people go, "Oh, trans is dangerous. It makes kids want to kill themselves." I go, "No, society is dangerous.
Yeah,
and it makes trans kids feel bad for being trans, and thus they want to kill themselves."
How is that not obvious? Like, how is that? Like,
because of conservative mindset.
Like
it doesn't see the world as it is. Yeah. And that's all I was trying to say. Even though I am pro anarchism and socialism, I don't delude myself that every culture is an anarchist socialist culture. In the past I'm talking about. And I try to honestly look, is that accurate?
Right.
What part is accurate? You know what I'm saying? Because I feel like that's just telling the truth, which is what I'm all trying to do.
Yeah. If you're honest, you will, and you believe in the well-being of those around you,
right?
Then this is where you end up. But
I feel so, yes. And once again, isn't that sort of obvious? That's where you should end up. I mean,
it seems like it.
But like I said, I don't really so much care about the politics. I care about ethics. Ethics then leads my politics.
Yeah,
and I think really you should do that for everybody. To me personally. Yeah. But as an axiologist, the values matter more than the end result.
It's like I believe in the liberation and well-being of all humans and all beings, really. And that leads me to look for solutions to the world, the ways that the world can run that will lead to that.
I totally
that
agree.
Led me to anarchism.
Me too. That's what I'm saying. Me too. Even though I didn't read anarchist literature, just learning stuff made me, in my own experience, made me realize. That's why I said I feel like anarchism is kind of intuitive ethically once you understand. That's why I say all the time, they go, how are you going to build morality? I go, we already do. You just violate it all the time.
Yeah,
people own themselves. People have self-sovereignty. You know this.
You know this.
You just lie and try to make excuses for why it's not true. Because here's the problem too. If you say that, then drugs has to be legal, abortion has to be legal, being trans has to be legal, or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Gay marriage has to be legal. People own themselves. Yeah. So to me, it's super simple. I mean, but it's the end result is even though it is ethical, and I've not had people say it's not ethical, but yet they don't want to follow that because that requires they follow a standard, even though it's ethical, that's a hell of a lot like anarchism.
Yeah. And in many ways, unless you use, like, if you avoid using the word anarchism, many people will agree with many of the things that we say.
Exactly.
So,
See, so you get my thing too. I would love to talk about anarchism more, actually. I fucking love it, but my goal, like I said, is outreach. And so I try to make videos and stuff that really appeals to, other people, and yet they can get what I'm trying to say and learn. And if nothing else, maybe that they don't take our ideas. I guarantee they'll have a more nuanced view of anarchism than they did before.
yeah.
Which, once again, education is important.
Yep, absolutely.
Because if you're not educated, you know what you might think? That anarcho-capitalism is anarchism, which it is not.
Which it is not.
And I don't know how hard it is to explain it. Let me explain it to the most simple way. Like they say, like, well, you're anti-state or whatever. I really am kind of anti-hierarchy.
Yeah.
That all of us are equal. And so that can't lead to states and can't lead to freaking stuff like elites and shit. I mean,
that's right.
No, there is no such thing as an elite to me. There's people in need and people that not in need. There's no elites to me.
That's right. That's the thing is, once you're anti-hierarchy, and that's anarchism. And then you have to be anti-state. So
and
that
as
means
an outgrowth of that ethical core.
Yeah. And that means you have to be anti-capitalism.
You do.
Because
or anti-elite, saying that some person is deserving to be represented me is better than me. If someone is representing us, they're representing us. They're not better than me.
Nope.
And so the same thing that, to me, I don't like representative government either. So
not the way
I'm from direct democracy, so I find that to be a violation of that. And so fuck that shit. But let's just say that even if I could somehow be convinced of it, I would only be convinced because you remove the hierarchy.
Yeah, that's right.
If you say that person is going to get, like as you said, not millions, and only allow people that have, say under 100,000, a regular person or something, that's the criteria to be able to represent the people, or say 50,000 a year. Well, I don't care. My point is, but they can't take bribes. They can't do, you know what I'm saying? Yep. And that they have to be working for the things that we care about. Not like even Republicans do not want Ron DeSantis to attack Disney.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, government will do whatever the shit it wants. Doesn't give a flying. That's why, to me, like, they go, oh, but if everybody could vote, then I don't have time to learn things. And I go, don't worry. You let other people vote for you like you do now.
Right. Yeah.
The difference is it'll be all of us, and not some one representative that has getting paid by, rich billionaires.
Yeah, that's right. And you can have, because we live in a very large society, which is just a large community, you can vote locally on a subject and then send one person to go and tell them what you voted for.
Exactly.
And then they come back.
I have no problem with that either. But as long as that person has no hierarchy standing.
That's right. Yeah. They're not in charge.
There you go. There you go. See, but right.
They're not in charge. They're just there to communicate what the community decided.
Right. Exactly. And this also goes back to my belief that reasonable laws I am okay with. Laws that say we cannot molest children, and that we have to, feed, your children, or you're going to have a problem, or you can't kill people, or you can't, rape people, or you can't, go 100 miles an hour past where kids are trying to cross the walk from a school. Just logical shit. I'm not against reasonable shit. What I'm against is shit like going against Disney, saying trans kids got to be removed from the family. What the fuck?
Yeah.
But anyway, so I'm saying is that anarchism is not rulers, not any rule of any kind. Everybody acts like is somehow no rules of any kind. Like
it literally just means like no ruler.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's why I try to make it easier. No hierarchy, because that to me is the core value that leads to no ruler.
Yeah, that's right.
And no
Yeah.
state, and once you get that, it's to me like self-sovereignty is a core value that almost all morality interacting with others can, in a sense, be built on top of.
Yeah.
The same thing with anarchism to me, that the removing the hierarchy value, unequal is what it is, the unequal hierarchy value, and making it more equal is what I want. And I'm also, though, a mutualist in the fact that I want all the good now. So if I can somehow make it better now and hope for the future too, I will do both at the same time. Because I feel like my obligation is also to people now. We live in the here and now. Are people starving now? Kids need to eat now. People need to stop war now. I mean, it isn't. Yeah. Anyways. So,
all right.
We'll go ahead and end the thing. Cory, tell us about what you do, and I'm sad to hear that you're going to be doing less.
Yeah, things are slowing down here for a little bit, and I if I have to get a part-time job, then it will be even less. But I do the Skeptical Leftist podcast and YouTube channel, and every couple weeks we do read reviews. Me and my buddy Justin Clark, we talk about a book that he's recently read. Sometimes I've read them too, but not all the time. I'm still working on like an explainer video of anarchism for non-anarchists. So that's a thing that's coming forward someday. I figure I'm making good progress on the script. So
Well, and I feel like that, even like I told you before, I feel like even making mistakes or whatever helps other people feel comfortable. Everything doesn't have to be flashbangs and explosions or whatever, excitement. I think that sometimes, because this stuff can, for people that aren't used to it, can feel hard.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
So
it's good to, because believe it or not, anarchists are the vast minority. There's very few of us, actually.
Yeah, unfortunately, totally.
Despite what it might feel like on Twitter some days. There's very few of us.
Yeah, but also I don't feel like I get a lot of support from anarchists, which I also find is odd.
The thing, anarchists love to argue with each other, which is apparently
we got to work together. Don't you get that? Anarchism is a society not of similar thinkers, but of similar behaviors.
Right. Yeah.
That's the core thing to me.
Yeah.
And so I that's why behaviors follow knowledge and thinking and values. Yeah. And so I hope you add to your both values and your thinking to enhance our future anarchism not being a fucking hellhole.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyways, take care, everyone, and it's been fun. I'm so glad I'm done with this series.
Right on. Have a good one.
All right, bye.
Hello, and welcome to my channel. I am Damien Marie AtHope. In the simplest terms, I am an atheist-humanist philosopher and prehistorical writer-researcher at DamienMarieAtHope.com. I am specifically an axiological atheist. An axiological atheism can be thought to involve ethical and value theory reasoned and moral argument driven apatheism, agnosticism, atheism, antitheism, antireligionism, secularism, and humanism. Axiological atheists can be understood as a value theory or a value science atheist. As an axiological atheism's ethically reasoned and constructive pro-humanity. I am an axiological thinker, value theorist. The science of goodness, worthiness, usefulness, valuableness, virtue, reliableness, accuracy, validity, morality, integrity, beneficialness, etc., etc. We axiologists have a value consciousness. And in general, we see the architecture of humanistic humanitarianism value in people that we see as dignity beings. Places and things are not. Axiology is a value theory. In its broadest sense, it involves areas of philosophy that are deemed to encompass some evaluative or evaluation aspect. Therefore, it crosses almost all domains in some way or another. Now for a more detailed terms as to what I am. I am an axiological atheist, an anti-theist, an anti-religionist, secularist, humanist, rationalist, writer, artist, poet, philosopher, advocate, activist, with schooling in psychology, sociology, as well as I am an autodidact, self-taught in science, archaeology, anthropology, and philosophy. I promote science and am against pseudoscience, pseudohistory, pseudomorality, things that are found in religion.